Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. Joining me as always is my Canadian brother. We got Cody Saftic sitting over there. You guys can follow him at CJ Saftic on Twitter. We are here propping you up for the big UFC 260 pay-per-view this weekend, headlined by a heavyweight bout between Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou. They step into the cage once again. I believe the first time was UFC 220 a couple years ago, where Stipe Miocic was able to weather the storm in the first round and then went on to win a decision victory. This time around, people think there's been a progress and regress on both sides here. I'm really looking forward to breaking down this one. And who better to break it down with than my guy, Cody. Cody, what's going on, dude?
What's going on, man? We finally had a really good week last week. Props maybe left something to be desired, but yeah, Dawson came through with that third round KO, so that alone certainly made things good. And I checked that page out of your book, man. I don't usually chase these.
1 second, dude. 1 second. It's like it's like he heard you crying from up here in Ontario, Canada, where he's like, "Oh, you want me to finish him? I'll finish him. Let me cash that ticket for you."
Dude, I'll have you know, the ref waves it off, and there's 2 seconds left, right? I don't know if there's a 1 second narrative. The timekeep was obviously in shock disbelief too, but hey, that's the fight game, man. You know what I mean? You need a couple bounces here, you need a couple bounces there, and ultimately we're chasing some props. This is a really nice looking card, but at the same time, losing Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega certainly puts a dent in it. We've also seen a lot of shakeups coming into fight week now, where is Jamie Mullarkey on the card? Is Shane Young on the card? We've seen Jessica Panay fall off. I mean, that's going to happen when your opponent's from Florida. There's just kind of COVID all over the place. So hopefully it remains intact. It obviously looks a lot less spectacular than it did, say, a week ago, but still, it's a pay-per-view offering. And you have the premier division on display, which is the heavyweight division, Miocic versus Ngannou rematch, something everybody's excited for, and really much a coin toss type fight. So happy to be joined by you as always, and hopefully let's find these juicy props. The one thing I will admit before we jump into it, though, is that we only currently have 10 fights, 2 of which have been thrown on late. So with Alonzo Menifield versus his new opponent, like the props aren't quite out yet.
Yeah.
So we'll do our best to just give something that we might be leaning towards, but it could be a quicker show than normal.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that they don't have full props out for Morales and Young. Yet, actually, no, wait, they don't even have for Menifield Cherant either. So we're going to be a little bit bare on those ends, but we'll do our best to at least prop you guys up and have you ready for those props whenever they do drop. But let's get right into the card. I do want to remind people, make sure you guys like and subscribe. That's always something I'm going to remind you guys to do right off the top of the show just to help us out and let odds know that you guys want us back on a weekly basis. So far, so good. I think we've been doing this since November, and we've been absolutely killing it. So appreciate everybody's support and appreciate everybody staying active in the chat as always. All right, let's kick this damn thing off. First up, we got Azaitar versus Marc-Andre Barriault. We got a pretty close line here, minus 125 on Barriault and plus 105 on Azaitar. I think me and you are quite familiar with Barriault with this time over on TKO. Obviously, for me as well, when I used to go back to those Fight Quest days in Kanawaki, Quebec, seeing this guy fight in this Legion or Legion Church or whatever the hell it was. But yeah, I've been following the kid for a while, and he's been progressing pretty well. The one fight that really caught my eye when he actually won was how he beat our guy Todd Stout, right? Like the guy goes out there, fights a big light heavyweight and pretty much makes it look easy. You know, he has a very good game plan there, goes out there and secures his second title, a simultaneous TKO champ, I believe, in the middleweight and light heavyweight division. And then he finally gets the call over to the UFC after beating Adam Hunter and gets thrown, I don't want to say to the deep end, but like the closer to the deep end, where you got guys like Andrew Sanchez and Jun Young Park, and then obviously Krzysztof Jotko. Those are very difficult fights for a guy like that to jump into right off coming into the UFC. Now, his next fight, you know, the Oscar Piechota fight, very good fight for him. Unfortunately, he pops for PEDs after that, and he doesn't get that crazy of a suspension as our guy, Mr. Abu Azaitar, who's been off for a long time now after his last victory where he fought Vitor Miranda. And it's funny because Vitor Miranda at that time was the old guy in the matchup, and now he's the old guy in this matchup. He's at like 35 years old. He just turned 35 actually on March 10th. But the last time we saw him in the cage was July of 2018. So we're approaching over 2.5 years now that this guy has not been in the cage. And even last time around, he just didn't look the greatest in the cage. Even though he picked up a win there, his cardio seemed to really fail him later in the fight. And that's where I think that Barriault could probably take advantage of him. His pace and his pressure that he puts on his opponents, especially that we saw in his last 2 fights, are very, very prevalent in this fight. And as long as he's able to stay conscious within that first round, I think his pace and pressure will catch up to Abu here. And I think this is a prime spot let me say it, for one of those round 3 props, because I think that we'll see Azaitar really huffing and puffing the later that this fight goes. And we got Barriault round 3 sitting at plus 1475. It's definitely one of my better round 3 prop calls over the last couple of years, as I believe that Abu just doesn't have the cardio to truly keep up here. Barriault, again, very rough stretch coming into the UFC 0-3, but he should be able to really start putting together, not to mention that he's moved down to Sanford MMA now. That's another big tool in his pocket that he can use. And I'm expecting Barriault to really run away with this fight the later that it goes, as long as he's able to stay conscious, like I said, and then hopefully put him away in round 3. So even Barriault inside the distance, I think that's a solid spot. Plus 315, even if he somehow gets it done in the second round, that's a good spot. Barriault by KO is plus 445, but then obviously the one that I'm going to be leaning on here is Barriault in round 3 plus 1475. How do you see it?
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way, Abu Azaitar. I don't think it's like, it's not a runaway favorite. It's not, oh, this guy's going to smash this guy. I think both of them are pretty close. Both of them are pretty competitive. I think you could come up with a pretty educated lean either side. But with Marc-Andre Barriault, okay, first and foremost, I thought he lost a touchdown fight, for being completely honest. He scrapes up a split decision, but, he has to grind on, he has to rely on getting, the advantageous positions. But when does an Ontario guy get a nod from one of the judges in Quebec against a local Quebec guy? It don't happen. But then he actually follows that up with a split decision win over Stranya Gavrilovic as well. So, not exactly beating high-level competition. Adam Hunter had originally signed to the UFC, but had popped for steroids, so they cut him immediately. Brendan Kornberger, he's a BC-based fighter. I like him good, but nothing beyond Canadian regional scene. Those are the wins. Coming to the UFC, again, you made great mention. They did him no favors. Andrew Sanchez, former Ultimate Fighter winner, fringe top 20 guy. Christoph Jocko, fringe top 15 guy. Definitely not an easy fight. Jung Young Park seems like easier, but realistically, big, strong, durable Korean guy with good boxing. And then the Oscar Piechota fight. Dude, I'm gonna completely level with you. He looked by far the best in that Oscar Piechota fight than he looked in any of his fights. His aggression was there. He was physically in good shape. His striking looked a lot more refined. Yes, he's taking on Oscar Piechota, who's not exactly a world beater opponent, but I thought overall he looked a lot better. Problem is, he goes, I guess, there's the win over Piechota. It's his only win in the UFC, and then he gets popped for Osterine, right? So he takes the suspension off Osterine. That's something, pretty much guys have been caught for it in the past. Was that the reason why he looked so sharp? Was that the reason that he was looking like he had that extra gear in him? Who knows? Take that off the table. You might just get a return to a regular version of Marc-Andre Barriault. And he's just average, man. His footwork's just average. He'll plod forward. Doesn't have tremendous power. Doesn't have some fight-changing X factor. He's a generalist. He can wrestle a little bit. He can strike a little bit. And he's durable. Durability here is the key for what I'm going to end up picking this for my prop, is that Marc-Andre Barriault has never been finished in his professional career. Scratch that. Never been finished in his amateur career, where he had actually lost 3 times. The guy is super durable. Yeah. You know that. I know that. He's fought at 205 pounds. He fights at 185. It's never been a problem for him. So I think, if anything, if he's losing this fight, this thing's going the distance. The flip side to the Abu Azaitar is that, he's pretty durable himself. He hasn't lost since a cut stoppage 9 years ago, right? Only time he's been finished. Since then, he's been fighting very middling level competition, but his last 3 fights, Vitor Miranda, Michael Aaron, and Danny Davis Jr., all have gone the distance. Both these guys kind of fight similar style, and where their striking isn't super accurate. You'll see with Abu Azaitar especially, he'll throw 4 or 5 just awful strikes, but it's all about just like perception, right? He'll get you to either raise your hands because these punches are coming, they'll land on the forearm, and as you raise that high guard, he tears you to the body. Or he tears you to the body, you start to drop your hands, he'll throw a looping combination to hit you up top. His cardio doesn't seem bad to me. The problem is that we're looking at a guy that's had a 3-year-long layoff, also popped for steroids, and is 35 years old. So it's like, what version are you getting? But ultimately, listen, he's managed by Ali Abdelaziz. His brother, Otman Azaitar, also managed by Ali Abdelaziz, is the guy who is most infamously had somebody caught scaling a wall in Dubai at the hotel to bring him a bag of potatoes. Now, Dana cuts the guy immediately because he's like, what the fuck is going on here? But coincidentally enough, or funny enough, they signed him back like a week later. Why? Power of Ali. You got the greatest manager in the game. They get a lot of favorable matchups for them. They're in the great graces of a lot of people. They're both personal friends of the Prince of Morocco, him and his brother Otman. It's like they got a lot going for him. Now, why at 35, with a guy who's already a millionaire by all accounts, he already has money, why would this guy want to fight again? Well, it's the competitive nature for it. But they go ahead and they get him the best possible matchup. Here's a guy in Marc-Andre Barriault who's effectively 1-3 in 4 UFC fights. His one win, he got popped. so he's not on the gear anymore. He hasn't looked overly impressive. Like, if there was a winnable return fight, if they were doing Abu Azaitar a favor here, this is the guy that they would give him, is Canada's own Marc-Andre Barriault. So anyways, where I'm going with the prop here is I got fight goes the distance. Again, I got that Azaitar, his last 3 fights gone the distance. He seems like a kind of guy that has some power, but is, a little bit reluctant to just let it all fly. And with Barriault, I mean, yeah, you generally sign a 4-fight deal when you come to the UFC. So the fact that this is his 5th fight, even though he's coming off a no contest, he would have re-signed a deal. Surely he wants to go and make a good impression of himself. But yeah, the Sanchez fight, the Jocko fight, the Jung Young Park fight, a lot of it is just some neutral positions. Time ticks away. Thing ends up going the distance. So I looked at this one, fight goes the distance minus 165. Honestly, pretty stomachable price tag. I think Azaitar will try to land to the body. I think Azaitar will try to let those hands go. I just think both guys are durable enough. They match up pretty similar. One thing I don't like about Abu is he's 5'8" at middleweight, taking on a guy that fought at light heavyweight. Like, that's going to be a problem. So I do understand what you're saying. Maybe he's going to wear on him, get him out late. I got a feeling that this one just goes to the decision. So I got minus 165, fight goes the distance. And then if I want to get a little bit greasy on it, talked about this with Paul yesterday, is let's say this is a close fight, goes to decision. I'm hoping that the powers of Ali, I'm hoping the powers that be scrape him that greasy split decision. And the Azaitar by decision is plus 235. So again, this is a fight where Azaitar has been known to go to decision. Barriault almost always goes to decision. He's been in a lot of decisions. And with Barriault, you see him win this Todd Stout fight with a split. The Stranda Gavrilovic fight with a split. He's actually been in a lot of split decision fights. The Krzysztof Jocko fight is a split. They're close decisions. They don't always go his way. If this is a close decision, doesn't go his way, we got a plus 235 price tag sitting for us. But yeah, listen, this is one of the most tightly contested fights on the card. Not because both guys just mirror each other or anything like that, but because the unknowns, right? You got a guy coming off a suspension who's otherwise 0-3 in the UFC versus a 35-year-old with a 3-year layoff, also coming off a suspension. He claims tainted supplement, but all the same, you know what I mean, right? It was like,
don't they all?
Don't they all? Right. He claims tainted potato, but what can you take out of that? I don't know. Anyways, I'll go.
What is it? Tainted poutine for my guy Marc-Andre Barriault? What?
Yeah, exactly. You know what? He never tested positive till he ended up at Sanford MMA. All jokes aside, though, this is going to be close. I don't know that you want to go super heavy on it and bank everything on it. But the prop that I would chase is fight goes the distance. That's what I like. That's my best prop on this fight. And if I want to chase some plus money, get a little degenerate on it, I think I'm going to go with Azaitar by decision, 235.
All right. Looks like we're slightly on the opposite ends there, but it's always good for you guys as the viewer to see both ends here. And so I don't mind disagreeing with my guy, Cody Saftic. Apparently one that we're going to be disagreeing is going to be up next. We got Omar Morales versus Shane Young here. We got minus 185 on Morales, plus 160 on Young. Not many props. We got the fight doesn't go to decision at plus 160. And then we have the over under set at 2.5 with the under at plus 180. Now the spot that I like here is Morales. And the spot that I'd be looking to take if we had access to it right now would be Morales by KO, because I do not like the chinny chin that we've seen on Shane Young as of late. Not to mention the fact that he just got knocked out, I believe 4 or 5 months ago, pretty bad by Ludovit Klein. And, given how hittable he is, I think he's going to start to crumble under the power of one Omar Morales. Now, a lot of people, in my opinion, are starting to write off Morales strictly because of that Giga Chikadze fight, where they're like, oh, Omar should go in there. Again, similar odds here. I think he was roughly a minus 185 favorite in that fight too. Nobody really gave Giga those props, right? Coming into the UFC, Giga was one of those guys where they're like, oh, he's a great, kickboxer coming from Groyd, all that type of stuff. We have to get him to the ground to get his victories. And that's not the approach that Omar decided to take in that fight. He just wanted to go out there and try to outstrike the striker here. And I think that was a very different, a very unfortunate situation for him, because I feel like if he did try to mix in the takedowns a little bit more, maybe it would have come out on the winning end. But Giga did a good job right off the bat, right? He started kicking the leg, started going for the calf kick. And I feel like that set the tone right away for Omar, who eventually started to be the one kind of succumbing the back foot. And he was the one moving backwards more, with Giga Chikadze really starting to put it on him. That's the difference here, where I feel like Shane Young, yeah, he looks great when he's the one on the front foot, like in his fights against Orlando D and Austin Arnett. He's not really respecting what's coming back his way. But then you see him kind of, give up the front foot to guys like Ludovit Klein and Alexander Volkanovski. Again, Volkanovski is just another level of his own, right? He's a champion. He's already made so much progress and has reached the pinnacle of this division. I feel like Omar Morales probably not going to be a 145-pound champion or anything like that, but I feel like once you feel the pressure and the power that's coming away from Morales, I think that's where we see Shane start to crumble. And I think that's where he's going to have some issues here, because one, the guy is very, very hittable, and that's a very big concern here against a big puncher like Omar Morales. Again, it was his first fight down to 145 last time against Giga Chikadze, so people might start to shit on his cardio a little bit too based on that fight, but I think that's very you got to give him the benefit of the doubt, given the matchup that he had against Giga Chikadze there. In this fight, I feel like he's going to be the one moving forward. He might get out volumed if this does go 15 minutes, but I feel like he's going to be the one landing the bigger and the more impactful shots. So if it does go 15 minutes, I think the judges will actually score the damage more than the volume of Shane Young. But I don't even think it's going to reach the scorecards, to be honest. I think that Omar Morales clips this guy on the chin and puts him out. His power is crazy. His hands are good. His kicks are very powerful as well too. The guy has a very solid Muay Thai approach to his striking, and he's a Sanford MMA guy as well, right? I follow Henry Hoof's Instagram like so loyally because I watch his stories pretty much every night, and they have absolute killers in that gym, and the amount of training partners they have is just insane. It's got to be nothing but beneficial for these guys. So the approach that I would take is Omar Morales by KO, but we don't have that option right now because the lack of odds that we have. So the only thing similar that we can go to is fight doesn't go to decision plus 160, or even the under 2.5 at plus 180. But I think that Omar Morales finds the chin of Shane Young and puts him out probably first or second round here. How do you approach this one?
Okay, well, straight up, we just don't really have any props to go off of. I mean, this is one of the fights that it was announced earlier, but they officially canceled it very briefly and then re-added it back on. So for whatever reason, the lines maker just kind of shifted it to the side, and then as a result, we just don't know what we're looking at. But as far as the fight plays down, like, I just can't really trust Omar Morales anymore. I like the guy. Don't get me wrong. Comes to the UFC, I like what I see out of him. But he's got a lot of power, right? You touch on the fact that, the guy hits. He's a big time hitter. On the Contender Series, you see him knock out Harvey Park, and it's just like, oh man, big knockout. But as far as his run in the UFC goes, like, he's super tentative with his hands. He just doesn't let them go. The Dong Young Ma fight, he knocks Dong Young Ma down, which, yeah, I mean, everybody that fights him and wins knocks him out. But the fight goes the distance. He lands 32 significant strikes over the course of 15 minutes. The Gabriel Benitez fight, which is his career best performance to date, he lands 63 significant strikes. That one's interesting because Gabriel Benitez, like, he busts his shin up on a check kick like pretty early, and then after that he just like freezes up, like he just doesn't fight the same. But Omar Morales, I don't want to move forward on this guy. He stands his ground extremely well. Okay, perfect. It's another low output fight, but that's a quality win, very quality win over Mowgli Benitez. So no shame in that. But then for whatever reason, he decides to drop down to 145. Dog, you're 35 years old. This is not the time. You're 2-0 in the UFC at 55. Clearly you can hold your own at 55. What would be the reasoning to make this move to 145? I don't know. Maybe he can make it. Maybe he feels better there. So he does make it. He gets a favorable fight with Giga Chikadze, which, one, Omar Morales can strike, but little known fact, which I myself did not even know until tape studying for the last one, dude's a BJJ black belt, right? So now there's a narrative that's like, just go in there and take down Giga Chikadze. Like, why would you stand with this guy? Why would you stand with this Kyokushin karate black belt world champion, former glory fighter? Like, really, he's one-dimensional with his kickboxing. Go and take him down. Omar Morales proved in that fight he has no ring IQ. He literally stood right in front of him. And again, opted to not throw shit. His volume is non-existent. He doesn't throw anything. He just stood there and stared at Giga Chikadze. Loses all 3 rounds, gets dropped twice in the third round. His cardio looked off. He looked off. His decision-making looked off. And the one moment where the fight did actually hit the ground, what BJJ black belt? Giga just stood back up effortlessly. Yeah. And so part of me kind of wonders, like, was it the weight cut? I know his volume was never good to begin with, but like, why the hesitancy? Now, Giga is the kind of guy that freezes you up, right? He's a world-class striker. Guys obviously don't want to move in on him. He's not huge on like the finishes himself, but it's like that body work. It really leaves you gasping. And then all of a sudden you get worried. You don't want to make a move on him. So you give him a pass in that fight. And in this fight, even it seems tailor-made. Oh, dude, he's going to knock out Shane Young, right? I don't necessarily agree with that. First of all, the Ludovic Klein loss. Who cares about that? That kid's legit, man. Yeah. That kid's fast. That kid's got nasty head kicks up top. I'm really interested in seeing him back. But, I mean, he went 3 rounds against Alexander Volkanovski in his UFC debut. Was chin not an issue then. But what I actually like out of Shane Young is he just moves forward. He's got a lot of aggression. So volume's not really an issue for him. In the fight with Austin Arnett, he drops Austin Arnett, but he lands 120 significant strikes. The Rolando D fight, it doesn't even finish the second round. He already lands 104 significant strikes. The Volkanovski fight, he got beat up bad, but he managed to take down Alexander Volkanovski. And now what he's done is he's gone and he's trained with those guys. He's in the room with Volkanovski. He's in the room with a lot of the guys from City Kickboxing. He's in the room trying to get better. And he's still only 27 years old. So what you have is a guy that's actually 8 years younger than Omar Morales, coming to his own, got chin checked his last time out. I give you that. And I am worried about that. But Omar's not knocked out any opponents in the UFC. He shows that he's a little too hesitant, doesn't let his hands go. 45 doesn't look like the best weight class for him. Like, could he win this fight? Yeah. Could he? And could he get the knockout? Yeah. But like, do I feel confident? No. So ever so slightly, as of right now, I'm feeling the underdog. But we're not here to talk about money lines. We're here to talk about props, and I don't got any. So would I take the Shane Young by decision? Well, it would be really juicy, and I would hope to get a nice juicy tag on it. But I mean, yeah, gun to my head right now, I'm going to go Young. I'm going to go to Young by decision. But we don't have any of these numbers. So
yeah,
I'm just not super confident in Omar Morales, which is crazy because going into the Giga fight, he was one of my locks of the night. You know, how's this guy going to lose to Giga Chikadze? It's a reoccurring theme now. 3 fights in the UFC, never lets his hands go. And the ring IQ, the decision-making, very bad in the Giga fight. And the drop down to 145 just seemed to give a different version of himself. And Henry Hoof, honestly, I don't know, I shouldn't say bad feelings. This is how I feel. Henry Hoof is one of the best coaches in the game, striking especially, striking almost mostly. Henry Hoof is an awesome coach, awful corner man. You listen to the advice he gives these guys between rounds, it's fucking brutal. There's no adjustments. It's like, you need to knock him out now. Knock him out now. It's like, man, give them something that he can actually use. But that's the difference. You could be a world-class coach, not a great corner man, right? Greg Jackson was kind of like that, right? He's a great coach. He's a great strategist. And then in the octagon, I'd be like, remember George is like, I broke my hamstring. He's like, okay, you need to beat him with it now. Beat him with your Cherant hamstring. It's like, what are you talking about?
I remember Henry Hoof with Rampage in the I believe it was in the not Rampage, sorry, with fucking Rumble, and just trying to convince him to like not give up against Daniel Cormier for some reason. And that second fight where he just kept wrestling with him and he's just like losing his mind. He's like, no, or sorry, even Michael Johnson too, right? Stay sharp, Michael. Stay sharp. And he goes on to get knocked out.
I actually feel sorry for him because he gets a lot of these guys that have known his shit in the apple pie, right? Yeah. Like he gets a lot of cast of characters of guys that are just like not the most self-confidence. But that gym, Sanford MMA, they produce a ton of good guys. And you see the reinvention of a Derek Brunson, you see the reinvention of a Michael Chandler, you see the reinvention
Gordon, another similar one.
Yeah, Jason Jackson's fighting in Bellator next week, and it's like he's operating on a whole new level. I mean, there's a lot of tremendous guys in the gym. It's a tremendous camp, and they got a lot of good talent. But, you know, with American Top Team has a dozen high-level coaches, and those coaches will get tailored to the fighter, right? Maybe you're a Mike Brown guy. Maybe you're a Dean Thomas guy. Maybe you're a Billy Patton guy. It doesn't matter, but you kind of get pushed into the direction of a Steve Mocco for your wrestling or whatever the case may be. You've got different looks, right? There, it's very much Henry Hoof is presiding over the entire thing, and he'll just have other fighters like, you know, Gilbert Burns will give you your grappling advice. It's like, man, I need a jiu-jitsu coach. I don't just need a training partner. I need something beyond that. Anyways, I'm not trying to discredit the gym. The gym's tremendous, and he's a fantastic coach. I just mean for Omar Morales, why not make adjustments mid-fight in the Giga fight? Why not just like, dude, go spam these takedowns and take them down? Like, were you worried about cardio? Was it a bad weight cut? Just too many red flags for me. So again, we don't actually have the lines as of now for the props, so it's easy to just say pass from this. But really, from a matchmaking standpoint, I think it's probably a pass, even if we did have the numbers.
All right. So it looks like I got Morales inside the distance. You're going with Shane Young via decision, yeah?
Yeah, that's what I would go with, yeah.
Perfect. All right, let's move along to the next fight here. This one I know we're definitely on the same side of. We got Modestas Bukauskas going up against Michal Oleksiejczuk. We got minus 160 on Lord Michal and plus 140 on Modestas Bukauskas. The spot that I know that me and you both like is the under 2.5. This is pretty much I don't want to say a no-brainer because Modestas could potentially try to stretch this fight longer given his cardio advantage here that he's going to have over Lord. And it's just the style of Michal, I believe, which is going to cause us under 2.5 to hit, which is I'm going to come out of that gate like a fucking cannon, and I'm going to go out there and put the pressure on you right away, do all these unnecessary movements and gas myself out, but hopefully throw enough strikes to potentially knock you out in the process. That's Lord Michal's game, right? The only time we've seen him go like 15 and have a decent game was against Khalil Roundtree, and then even after that fight, he gets popped for USADA, has to sit outside on the bench for a while, and then comes back and has two quick finishes again, beating Gadzmurad and Tagulov, and then I'm trying to remember the other one. John Vellante, exactly, our guy, Big John Vellante. Finishes him in a minute and a half, and then finish Antagulov in 45 seconds. That was like the most action-packed fight you can see, right? Like you got Gadzmurad going there for takedowns, unsuccessful on it, and then Michal just staying away and then putting together a beautiful combination. Yeah, that was a very solid performance. Then we see the Ovin St. Preux fight, right? Has a great first round, lighting up OSP, even dropping him a couple times, having a ton of success. And then in that second round starts slowing down, and the confidence of OSP starting to rise. And that's where you see him start to clinch up and get the takedown with relative ease. and then locks up that Von Preux choke and submits him. And then the last time around where we saw him against Jimmy Crute, where Jimmy Crute wanted none of that stand-up, going for the takedown right away. And he did struggle a little bit. I feel like I've been a little bit too harsh on Michal's takedown defense, but like he made him work for those takedowns. And there was even an instance where Jimmy's like, okay, I'm going to stop taking him down. Let me throw a legitimate combination, making him think that we're going to be in the striking range. And then as soon as we get a counter from Michal, we see a beautifully timed takedown from Jimmy, and then he locks up a Kimura there. So I feel like Lord still has a little bit of potential. The guy's only 26 years old, right? If he's in the wrestling gym day in and day out and he can shore up that takedown defense, I feel like he could be a big trouble in this 205-pound division. Better yet, I think he should go down to 185 given how undersized he is. But if he's going to use his size and his light weight to his advantage in this light heavyweight division, I think it could work out for him. He just needs to go out there and make sure the fight stays on the feet and then just get his hands going. And hopefully, he's able to knock his guys out pretty early. Otherwise, you're going to start huffing and puffing the later this fight goes. Bukauskas, on the other hand, mainly a striker, does have a purple belt in his back pocket if he needs it. I'm not sure how successful he'll actually be on takedowns here, given that's not really his game. He's the one usually getting taken down and then gets back to his feet and then knocks out his opponents. So I'm intrigued. I feel like this under really depends on how Bukauskas approaches this fight. Is he just going to go out there and try to slow down Michal by pushing him up against the cage or dragging him to the ground? And how much will he struggle to keep Michal in those situations? Regardless, the gas tank of Michal, we know, is not that reliable, and that's what's eventually going to be the downfall of him. So I feel like Michal round one is a good approach here, where you're getting plus 275, or after that you can go with Bukauskas plus plus 825 in round two, plus 1550 in round three. I don't think this reaches the second round, to be honest. So I think that Michal puts together a solid amount of strikes and then finds that chin of Bukauskas and puts him out. The under 2.5 is probably my safest spot. It's my second favorite bet on the card, to be honest. The under 2.5, minus 150, minus 155-ish. I love that spot. Let me know how you're looking at this one.
Yeah, I mean, Lord Michael, first of all, he's got bad cardio. We kind of know that. But one thing to note is that he's only 26 years old and he's coming on this fight on a 13-month layoff. So, one's got to imagine, as a young fighter coming into still not even really near the prime of his career yet, you got to know the exact same thing that everybody knows. You and I know it. Everybody in the comment section knows it. This guy's got a round and a half of gas in the tank. So it's like, why not go address those problems? And if he does, then he could be potentially a very solid prospect. We know about his power, but he's got excellent punch selection. He knows exactly when to throw the strike at the right time. The Jean Vellante fight, he just cuts right through him. First of all, the Khalil Roundtree fight, right? This is his debut. He's a plus 300 underdog against Khalil Roundtree, who's supposed to be, a physical specimen, a great striker. But you see right off the bat, it's like, this kid's got better cardio than Khalil Roundtree, which is not saying anything at all. Yeah. But it's just like, again, his punch selection in that fight's really good. He makes him miss, he makes him pay, and he goes out there and he outscores him. Then you see the Jean Vellante fight. It's like, man, he strategically goes to the body and rips him bad. Jean Vallante's got no answer. He tumbles over. Gazmarat, it is what it is. But that uppercut was sneaky, man.
So nice.
Sneaky little shot. It's like, okay, we got a legitimate little prospect here. Now he draws OSP. Well, OSP is a top 15 guy, maybe even a top 10 guy. He's fought John Jones for a title, won 5 rounds with him. He's fought the absolute who's of guy in the division, and he's a sneaky, savvy veteran. That first round, Oleksiejczuk absolutely murders him. He beats him bad. Probably 10-8 round for Lord Michael in the first round. But then that's when cardio we finally see it, because we hadn't seen it until then, right? He's usually beating these guys fairly early. In the Roundtree fight, he was on the gas, so it's like maybe that's why he didn't get tired. But he's massively tired against OSP. I give him a pass there because he looked really good in the first round. And it's a top 10 guy. It's a top 15 guy. It's a gatekeeper type opponent. They're going to expose you in those elements. Jimmy Crute's a top 15 guy too. Yeah. Borderline top 10. Kid's got all the skills in the world. And you know what? Lord Michael gives up 8 takedowns in that fight. It only lasts 3.5 minutes. 8 takedowns. But it's like you could see where he was improving a little bit. You could see where he was trying to get back up. Unfortunately, 8 takedowns is 8 takedowns. He starts to get tired again, and Jimmy Crute submits him. It is what it is. The loss from Modestas to Jimmy Crute's a lot worse because Jimmy's a BJJ brown belt. I think he's a black belt now, actually, maybe. But he likes to get these fights to the ground. He's a physical guy. He's very wily. He's young. He's aggressive. But his striking is still a work in progress. Yes, head coached by Sam Greco, my boy. Got a poster I'm hanging on the wall. Slamming Sammy Greco. It's getting better. But he just spammed the same right hand over and over against Modestas and eventually caught him and knocked him out. Modestas has also got a loss to John Redmond, a minute 12 into the first round. John Redmond was 5 wins, 11 losses at the time. So my problem with Modestas is he stands very high upright. He seems to be hittable. I don't think he's got a great chin. Guy's a European kickboxing champion. Guy's got big power himself. I give him the cardio advantage. He's a former Cage Warriors champion, fought into the 4th round one time and got to finish. You know what I mean? Like, cardio didn't let him out. This thing goes a few rounds. Modestas is most definitely a live underdog. My thing is, I think that, Lord Michael's going to chin check him at some point within the first 2 rounds and topple him over. So, yeah, we're in agreement. We're looking for a prop. We're looking for a prop with the best chance of hitting into that under 2.5. It covers you on both sides. If Oleksiejczuk goes out there and gives a vintage performance of himself, what am I saying vintage? Kid's only 26. If he goes out there and does what he's capable of, he's knocking out Modestas. And I think that's the angle that I would more likely go for in terms of a straight-up winner. Oleksiejczuk by KO is plus 160. Again, this is a guy that finishes almost all of his fights by finish. He is very wily. He can get that knockout. Plus 160 looks like a good price tag. But why not cover ourselves on both sides? Just take the under 2.5, as you already spoke about, minus 155. And that way it covers that if Oleksiejczuk goes out there and gets the knockout, great. If he doesn't knock him out in the first round, maybe round and a half, he probably will get tired again. And once you get tired against Modestas Bukauskas, you're in a lot of trouble, man. Because, yes, he could flip in his takedown of his own, but beyond that, he's got better cardio and he's got credible striking. Big power as well. You got 2 power guys coming at each other, 2 guys that are primarily strikers. One guy's got bad cardio, one guy's got a bad chin. This thing ain't going 15 minutes. So the under 2.5 seems like the move. But as far as like a plus money play, something a little more juicy, the Oleksiejczuk by knockout was plus 160. I'm not 100% sure on what the first round knockout prop is. I know somebody in the comment section mentioned
275, I believe. Oh, first round knockout as well.
Yeah.
First round KO for Michal is like plus. Why is it not coming up here?
It's not every book offers it. That's the kind of problem with a lot of times you'll get an inside the distance prop, or he finishes the fight in the first round.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody expects Lord Michael to get his first round submission.
Yeah, Oleksiejczuk TKO round 1 plus 275.
You know what? If it's plus 275 for round 1 and plus 160 for just any of the rounds, myself personally, I would go with 160. I know some people like to be a little more bold on that, but like I'm getting a nice plus money price tag as it is. I don't feel the need to push it, but if you want to be safe, you want to go with the best angle, you're not 100% sold on this kid. He's been off for a year. He's still young. He's got bad cardio. I like Modestas. Take the under 2.5. Cover yourself both sides.
One thing I actually found funny when I was just going through the stats here, Michal Oleksiejczuk dropped Gadzimir Antigulov 3 times in 44 seconds.
That's the craziest 44 seconds you've seen, man. It's nuts. It's crazy.
All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Jared Gooden going up against Abubakar Nurmagomedov. Both fighters have only competed in the UFC once at this point in time. In terms of odds here, we got Nurmagomedov, obviously, with that Nurmagomedov tax on his name, minus 240 and then plus 200 on Jared Gooden. This is actually the first fight that I looked into when starting to tape this card, because I'm like, Nurmagomedov's got to be like the lock of the night player, right? Like, he's got to be the guy that I'm going to go out there and try to back. But once I go into the tape, I just can't do it. I can't pull the trigger on this guy. Like, he is a far cry from Umar and Khabib. So if you guys thinking that you're betting on a Nurmagomedov here and expecting a smashing, you're getting, whatever the opposite is of that, because he's going to be able to get the guy down. Don't get me wrong, but his guard passing is not good. There's been numerous times where you see referees stand up his fights because he's just not, 1, able to pass the guard, and 2, he doesn't just stay active enough on top. Like, yeah, he'll be able to get good and down here, but like, how much damage is he truly going to do there? And he doesn't have the greatest gas tank either. That's something a little bit of a concern here. There's so many times you see in the third round where he's like looking up at the clock, like, oh, fuck, I got 2.5 minutes. That's still got to try to survive because I won the first 2. Let me just try to hold on to this guy and try to get to the bell. That's a big concern for me for Abubakar. Jared Gooden is a big dude at this weight class. The guy hits with a lot of power too, and he has a ton of experience. You're talking about a guy who came into the UFC with 21 fights. That's not often you get a guy come in with that big of a experience on the regional scene here. He's been all over the place too, right? Fighting for Island Fights and Titan FC and just going all over the place, trying to stay active enough to make it to the UFC, and luckily he did, running into Alan Joban in his first fights. Very good fight. Both guys rocked each other a ton of times. Joban obviously comes out on the winning in that fight. But even in fights where you see Gooden get tested in his grappling, most notably that Mike Graves fight, which is over a couple of years now, but that fight went 5 rounds, where you saw Graves with that same game plan of like, I'm going to continuously try to take this guy down. But we saw Gooden do good things in terms of retaining his guard and getting back to his feet and trying to just get this fight into the striking range. And I feel like if he does that here against Nurmagomedov, he has the potential to potentially knock him out. I think he has big enough power to land on Nurmi's chin, causing him some troubles. But like, I still, at the end of the day, do end up leaning Nurmagomedov here, as I feel like his takedowns will continuously bail him out here. I've seen instances where Jared Gooden has horrible gas tank issues, and then I've seen situations where he's going 5 rounds with Mike Graves and actually, stuffing takedowns in rounds 4 and 5. So I don't know what kind of Jared Gooden we're going to be getting here, but Abubakar, man, it's very tough to trust him, especially at this price tag. So how do we make that price tag better? Nurmagomedov via decision, because I don't know if he'll be able to submit Gooden. I think Nurmagomedov by decision here is plus 140. I don't think that's a bad lineup here, but I think a good hedge is Gooden by KO at plus 575. You could get a much worse line for a guy that's as reliant on the KO as Jared Gooden normally is. And given the power that he has and given his ability to retain guard and get back to his feet, I think that's a very live line too. So my favorite prop in this fight is Gooden by KO at plus 575. However, I do think that Abubakar just weasels this one out, gets a couple takedowns, enough control time up against the cage, drags him to the ground. But anytime this fight is on the feet, I will be praying for all those people that have Abubakar on parlays or whatever the hell, because it's going to be a very, very tough time for him to get it to the ground and also survive while on the feet. But I do like Abubakar by decision plus 140, good spot, and then hedge with Jared Gooden plus 575 on the KO, I think is a solid spot. How do you like this one?
Yeah, dude, you're not wrong, right? So with Jared Gooden, it's like, does he have that ability to go out there and land the knockout? Yeah, absolutely. With Abubakar, you've seen this guy got dropped a couple of times. I mean, both of his previous losses before the Zawada triangle choke, I mean, were both by knockout. Magomed Mustafayev, he like clips him with a spinning back fist. It's really grainy footage. You can't find it online, but it's like he's out on top of him. Like he's out. The ref just waves it off. They call it a cut stoppage, but it's like he's out, right? And then you see in the Pavel Kush fight in PFL, it's like Pavel Kush should not be knocking you out. He's a leg lock master.
Plus 13 or minus 1350 favor in that fight, right? Crazy.
Dude, he just spammed uppercuts over and over again. Yeah. But here's the thing with Abubakar. He's got this thing where he freezes up momentarily. He gets hit and he just like stands upright and just like stiffens. It's almost like a shell. And you can just tee off on him. So with Jared Gooden, you mentioned Jared Gooden 21 pro fights prior to signing with the UFC. Here's an even better stat. He turned pro in 2015. So he had 21 fights in like 5 years as a pro before getting signed. Like, dude's a badass. Dude also had like 6 fights as an amateur. So yeah, Jared Gooden, he's willing to get in there. He's willing to mix it up. He's willing to throw hands. But I mean, you talk about the Michael Graves fight, and I do want to talk about that. So it is a headlining fight for Titans for the welterweight championship, but he misses weight by 4.5 pounds, right? So the title wasn't available for him. It was only available for Michael Graves. You mentioned the fact that his cardio looked good there. He went 5 and he was able to get back up, but he didn't have a bad weight cut, right? He missed weight by 5 pounds. Then you look at the Will Santiago fights, the very next fight, right? It's listed at 170. Then he fights Bruno Oliveira. That's the only time he's ever been knocked out. The fight's at 185. The next fight against Marcel Stamps, he comes in at 176. The fight with Jay Jackson, it's at 185. He beats Trent McCown at 170, and he fought Alan Jouban at 170. But I don't think this guy's particularly good at making weight. I mean, the fact that he missed 5 pounds in a title fight against a former training partner of Michael Graves, he was excited for that fight. It's like, you miss weight by 5 pounds, that's a problem. Then you miss weight again, another fight, 176, and then you take 2 fights at 185 pounds. I know Jared Gooden, there was a lack of opportunities on the regional scene, so at some point he was just taking whatever fight. But I would also have to think that coming into this spot, you probably do want to wait until the weigh-ins to see exactly if he makes weight, how he looks on the scales, and all this and that. But then it comes down to cardio, right? Abubakar's got to take this guy down. He's got to grind him. Jared Gooden does have a good gas tank. In fact, you look at the Alan Jouban fight. The 3rd round's his best round. He hurt Jouban in that round. He's coming forward. But he also looks puzzled and a little bit deflated. Like he just didn't have a plan B to go to. He's got the power. He's got a nasty long reach on him. If he stays to the outside and pops the jab, he can have some success. And honestly, with Abubakar, for a guy that carries the most famous last name in the game, Nurmagomedov, a training partner of Islam Makhachev, a training partner of just, some of the best grinders. This guy can grind, not to the same level, but I mean, that is the style. But sometimes he strikes a little bit too long. He stands in front of his opponents, but it's a little bit too long. You got to spam these takedowns, man. It's not the prettiest game plan, but it's the most effective game plan. If he stands in front of Jared Gooden, then like you said, you're hedging yourself out the other side. Jared Gooden's live for the knockout. But I would think if he just goes out there, he realizes this is a water fight. You got caught by a triangle. It is what it is. Is Jared Gooden going to catch you in a triangle? Not very likely. So go out there, get this guy down. Don't let that memory be in your head and be afraid to shoot the takedown. Just go out there and grind on him. And in a 2nd round, Jared Gooden has a lot less power. In a 3rd round, Jared Gooden has the less power. You just got to keep grinding on him. Bubakar's got a good gas tank. He's just got to make sure he doesn't get clipped. So I honestly do look this as a dangerous enough fight. But what I ended up going with was Nurmagomedov Gooden goes the distance, which is minus 165. And like you mentioned, Nurmagomedov by decision plus 140. If you want to hedge at the other side, take Gooden. Gooden is what I would classify as a live underdog. He might even be one of the dogs of the night. If he goes out there and knocks out a Bubakar, the Jared Gooden backers are going to be looking really smart. I'm not the kind of guy that covers myself both ways. Oh, I fucking told you it was possible. It's like I took a Bubakar, so I'm wrong. If Jared Gooden wins, I'm wrong. Yeah. But I fully recognize that there's some danger there. I fully recognize that it could be his fight, and I would think that I don't want too much exposure. But I'm going with the Ali Abdelaziz effect, and they get the fights. They get the fights they want. They get the matchups they want. No doubt, this is a fight that Abubakar and Team Nurmagomedov in general would like. You know, Jared Gooden is a winnable opponent. He's got not the greatest takedown defense. He's not the greatest cardio. You know, go out there and take this guy down. So I hope that that's the game plan, and I hope he's able to, you know, utilize it effectively.
I truly can't. I wish I came out as almost confident as you after I taped this fight, because I would have hammered a Bubakar, but I just can't do it at this line. But I do see it. Plus 140 decision line is a very good spot for sure, at least value wise here. I do want to give a big shout out to my guy Biggs Omega in the chat here, who is reminding us that Jared Gooden is now at ATT Georgia. He's been all over that Georgia Atlanta area in terms of finding gyms to train at, but he is training with the Lima brothers, so that could play some part in here. Not to mention, we did, if you remember Diego Lima's last couple fights, the guy's showing off great takedown defense, and maybe that's something that he's trying to ingrain in himself this time around here coming in against Nurmagomedov. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. I believe it is the prelim headliner. We got Alonzo Menifield taking on short notice replacement and LFA light heavyweight champion Fabio Cherant. We got obvious chalk here on Alonzo Menifield's side. I saw him yesterday at minus 250. Now he's up to minus 290. You got plus 245 coming back on Fabio Cherant. Obviously over under being minus 145 at 1.5, and then the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 245. No other props there, but I'm assuming me and you are on the same page here. Alonzo Menifield, you know, knockout. That's probably the way to go here. The only loss on Cherant's record is on his Contender Series fight when he fought Oleksiejczuk and ate that beautiful flying knee. Probably one of the best sequences I've seen in terms of finishing a fight. You know, gets his chin rocked there, but he just seems like a guy that's just so accepting of the back foot and allowing his opponent to kind of dictate the pace. And you don't want to do that here against a guy like Alonzo Menifield, who has power in his hands and has been training for months now, it seems, right? So many times it seemed like he was scheduled to fight William Knight. The fight just doesn't end up happening. Luckily for both of them, we got Knight rescheduled for April 10th to take on Da Un Jung, and Menifield actually gets to cash a paycheck this weekend, whether he wins or not, and takes on Fabio Cherant. But I just don't see anything that truly jumps out the page on Cherant here, right? The guy's still young, like you can give him that. Only 8 MMA fights. Even our guy Alonzo Menifield, right? Only 11 MMA fights. The guys are, they're heavy punchers, usually looking for that knockout. Alonzo Menifield, I would say, is the heavier puncher here. Cherant, again, his lackadaisical approach to allowing his opponents to kind of dictate the pace is my issue here. The guy's 7-1 though. It's working out for him for some reason, right? And last time around we saw him against tough alum Myron Dennis, and he goes 5 rounds and steals a couple rounds here and there, rocking and hurting Myron, even breaking his nose, I think, in the second round to really have that nose pouring for the majority of that fight. But this is a tougher one for me. I'm not willing to lay the chalk here on Alonzo Menifield. I would love to see what the KO line is whenever that drops. Even though under 1.5 at minus 145, I'd like a little bit better of a price than that. So personally, this is a fight that I'm just staying the hell away from. I don't know if I believe in Cherant enough to actually go out there and get a finish of his own, or even grind out Alonzo Menifield. He seems like the guy that's been able to go, a solid 3 rounds or 5 rounds and actually come out with a decision victory. Whereas Alonzo Menifield, but both of his fights have gone to a decision, he's lost. So I do lean Alonzo here. I think he gets a knockout, probably first or second round, but I'm not banking too hard on it. How are you seeing it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here. Fabio Cherant just fought those 5 rounds against Myron Dennis like 5 weeks ago. So one would figure that he's in pretty good shape and he can fight 5 rounds. And well, that's the thing with Alonzo Menifield. He's also in good shape, but cannot fight 5 rounds. And so, yeah, Fabio Cherant was going to be a live underdog. He's just got to extend this fight, get it to some later rounds. Alonzo Menifield, all of his wins are first round knockouts. He does have a second round knockout, like 20 seconds into the round. Yeah. He's a quick finisher, and that's to his detriment. When he's being the physically empowering guy, he goes out there and he gets those finishes. But we've noticed in his last 2 fights, like if he doesn't, the Devin Clark fight, you can't discredit him in the first round, maybe the first 3 minutes, let's say. He rocks Devin Clark with a nasty little uppercut. Devin Clark's eye starts to swell shut. He's having some success, and Devin Clark just spams this. It's not spamming takedowns. It's just cage control. He just literally gets on him, presses him up against the cage, and just holds him up against the cage. Unfortunately, that's enough. Like, Menifield's hips look really good. His takedown defense looked really good. 12 minutes of that fight, he eventually does get taken down in the third, and then he's completely gassed and has nowhere to go. But it was just like grinding on him up against the cage was enough to fatigue him. And then you see the OSP fight. Again, no discrediting OSP, who's a top 15, top 10 guy, world title challenger. We've already, broken down all the credentials that OSP has. But Alonzo Menifield, he fought like a completely different guy. I mean, normally he goes out there and lets his hands go, tries to get that first round knockout. It was almost like Francis Ngannou losing to Stipe and then fighting Derek Lewis. That's how he fought OSP. He just stood there and stared right at him. He did absolutely nothing. And then in the second round, he was still tired. He was losing. And either his corner said something or it clicked in his head. He was like, I'm going to lose this fight. I need to do something. And tries to bum rush forward into the patented check hook from OSP, which, ask Shogun how that one goes. Like, it's his best counter punch, and it knocks out Alonzo Menifield. Now he's been off a year, and you've seen the tale of two fighters, right? Here's a guy that goes forward and pressures you and lets his hands go. He's serviceable for a round, but beyond that, he's got nothing. If he doesn't let his hands go and he just stands in front of you, there's nothing. He's got no wrestling game. He's got no cardio. He's got no dynamic footwork. He just lines you up with those big right hands. Fabio Cherant, we can all laugh at him for the Contender Series. Oh, he got knocked out by Oleksiejczuk, who hasn't exactly looked good in the UFC, right? So we'll just write him off. But one, he's like 24 years old when he takes that fight. It's 2 years ago. Second of all, if you watch it back, he hurt Oleksiejczuk. He had him in some serious trouble. He's an undefeated, brash prospect at the time. He kind of made a mental lapse and just goes at him and eventually gets himself knocked out. But since then, he's right the ship. And again, yeah, he is on short notice, but he just fought 5 rounds 5 weeks ago. If he comes up in decent shape, all he's got to do is just avoid a Menifield the first round. The second round, try to put it on him a little bit. And the third round, hopefully take him out like he would be a live underdog. I don't want to back him. I'm not backing him as a live underdog. Alonzo Menifield, the money line's off currently, minus 290. Is just, I don't have the trust in him. You would probably want to chase that first round knockout or that early under 1.5, let's say, for Menifield. I know we're not going to get the price that we want on it, so it's worth a pass. And then finally, if you're thinking to yourself, geez, Cody sounds like he likes Fabio Cherant. I don't like Fabio Cherant. And the last thing I need to leave you with is you need to watch the weigh-ins, right? So he loses to Oleksiejczuk. His very next fight was Eric Murray Jr. on LFA. He comes in at 213 for a light heavyweight fight. His opponent, Eric Murray Jr., came in at 203. Motherfucker gave up 10 pounds in that fight, and he gets anaconda choked in the first round. The very next fight against UG, wouldn't you know, he comes in at 209 pounds. Now, he did make it against Myron Dennis, but taking this one on short notice, having just fought 5 weeks ago, what do you do after you fight? You go on a little vacation, you go on a little bender.
Especially after winning the title.
This is going to be a tough weight cut, man. Yeah. His name's the Water Buffalo, and if he retains some of that water, he's going to be in some trouble, man. So you want to watch weigh-ins. You want to see Menifield. Does Menifield got the sparkle in his eye? Is this a good weight? You mentioned extended camp, chip on his shoulder, first 2 pro losses. Devin Clark's a fringe 20 guy. OSP's a guy that's been around the game many times and has been all throughout the rankings. Those aren't the worst losses in the world, right? Going out there and fighting Fabio Cherant, that should be a winnable fight for Alonzo Menifield. And last but not least, Fabio Cherant has never knocked out an opponent, right? He showed 0 wins by KO. Okay, that's going to be a problem here, right? So his entire game is a submission-based game. But as we talked about Menifield and the Devin Clark fight, Devin Clark's a decent wrestler, guy that wrestled collegiately and had success. He's not able to take Menifield down until late in the third round after he grinded him. So with Fabio Cherant, his game is also predicated on the grappling. He doesn't have the same wrestling, though. If he's not able to get this fight to the ground, where does he win it? Standing? Okay, good luck. Can you win a fight just based on cardio? Yeah, but you got to let your hands go. You got to outwork the guy. So anyways, I'm going to go with Menifield. I don't like the price, and we don't have a prop currently at our disposal, so I can't leave you with much. But again, this is not the prettiest card from a betting standpoint. We're going to have to pull the trigger. We're going to have to play some plays, and you guys know me. I'm going to have to put some parlays together. But it doesn't scream like utmost confidence on a lot of them. There is that B side. There is that red flag. There is that greasiness, and it's probably going to rear its ugly head come Saturday.
Yeah, we do want to give a quick shout out to also Joe Lozon, who I believe trains Fabio Cherant, at least in his BJJ aspect. I'm not sure as a full-time MMA coach here. But a lot of question marks regarding this one. And obviously, we don't have full props available to us. I'm going at least Alonzo KO, at least something to leave the viewers with when the props do drop. Is that what you agree with? Is that the prop that you would go with, not knowing the odds currently?
I would think that if you just, gun to my head and you're like, what's the most likely outcome of this fight? I would say Alonzo Menifield by knockout. I also don't know if they released over 1.5. Part of me kind of thinks that over 1.5 is live because Cherant's going to try to just matador this guy for the first round anyways. Like, he doesn't want to engage a big, strong Menifield early. He's going to try to take, he'll try to take him into past that first round. And for Menifield, the way he normally fights, you don't want to bet over 1.5. Are you crazy? But the way he fought against OSP, he was a changed man. He's 33 years old. He realizes he carries a lot of muscle. He didn't want to exert himself, but it went really poorly. So similar to Francis Ngannou after the Derek Lewis fight, he goes back to the basics. It yields results, right? If Menifield goes back to those basics, he probably does come out swinging and has a very live chance of knocking out Fabio Cherant. So the over under 1.5, like, again, it causes you to overthink it. The most logical play would be Menifield by knockout, but we're not going to get a grip price on that.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the main card here. And before we do, we got 260 live viewers. Shout out to everybody spending your Thursday evening with us. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like below. We could truly appreciate it. I believe we're around that 70, 80 mark range right now. Let's try to get that to like 100, 150 by the time the show wraps up. So if you guys can help us out, hit that like. All right, let's get to the main card here. First things first, we got Jamie Mullarkey taking on Khama Worthy here. Relatively close odds. We got Khama Worthy as a -130 favorite, +110 on Jamie Mullarkey, and I'm liking the dog here. I like the way that Jamie Mullarkey is able to mix up his MMA game compared to Khama Worthy, who seems mainly like a striker, mainly a counter striker, albeit too. The Luis Pena fight, man, that one was a tough one if you're back in Luis Pena at that juice, kind of like I was considering.
I fucking did it. I did it. It was awful. It was an awful.
Exactly.
Time.
You expected Pena to go out there and take this guy down time and time again. He's only really doing it in the second round and has massive amount of success in that second round. And then for some reason just gets put into the worst freaking guillotine possible, gets choked out by Khama Worthy in the third round. It's really stemming from his regional fights. His last couple fights before coming to the UFC, you see him getting taken down by guys that seemed like they couldn't even cut it in the UFC. Shout out to our guy Joy Munoz, who seemed like he was like 2 or 3 weight classes below Khama Worthy, still going out there and taking him down time and time again. But obviously Khama Worthy comes out on the winning end in that fight too. We all know what Khama is most famous for, right? Making his UFC debut as a +600 favorite on a short notice replacement against his former training partner Devontae Smith, knocks him out. All hail the Death Star. This guy's fucking yelling at people, thinking that he's the next coming of Jesus or some shit. Goes out there, beats Luis Pena as a +215 dog, and then gets knocked the fuck out by Mr. Potato Bags himself, Otman Azaitar, first round, and kind of halts the momentum that Khama was on. This fight against Jamie Mullarkey, I think he's going to have to really lean on that striking and hope that the durability of Mullarkey doesn't hold up, just as it did in his last couple fights. Remember that war against Brad Riddell? Holy crap. These guys are just throwing leather at each other. Nobody's dropping. Nobody's getting knocked out or anything like that. So I feel like his chin issues are, they're okay. He's gotten knocked out a couple times, I believe twice on the regional scene, but he's really distanced himself from that, where I feel comfortable enough to say that I would trust him to a certain extent that he probably is not going to get knocked out by a somewhat low output Khama Worthy in this fight. I think he does a great job of mixing his, full MMA game together. Very good fight IQ in terms of when to take fights to the ground, when to really mix it up on the feet. I believe most of his training camps in the past have been headed by former UFC fighter Dan Kelly. I believe he's been spending some time with the city kickboxing guys this time around. But I do think that it comes down to him getting the takedowns, which I think are not going to be easy per se, but he will be able to get them. And I truly thought that he got robbed in that Faraz Ziam fight. If you go back to MMA decisions and watch that, or look at that third round, 79% of people had Jamie Mullarkey winning that fight, but I believe every single judge actually ended up giving it to Faraz Ziam. I'm not sure what they were watching, but I saw a ton of control and solid damage from Mullarkey in that fight, in that round specifically, and it did end with Ziam on top landing a couple shots, but I didn't think that nullified all the work that we saw from Mr. Jamie Mullarkey earlier in the round. So I'm taking Jamie here. I think he gets the takedowns against Khama. I think the over 1.5 is a very good spot here too. I expect this fight to get kind of drug out a little bit. -175 is the over 1.5. Fight starts round 3. -120 is not too bad of a spot either. But the spot that I really like in this matchup is Mullarkey to win via decision, +315. I think that's a great line considering he should be able to control Khama here. Again, as long as his durability holds up like it has over the last couple fights, he's definitely going to have to eat some shots from Khama here. But if he can continue to keep chugging, moving forward, and completing his takedowns and getting that control time up against the cage, I think Mullarkey takes this fight by decision. How are you seeing this one?
Well, thank you for bringing up the Ziam robbery, because it was a robbery. I don't understand him, man. 5 takedowns. He controlled him. He had him tired. He controlled the majority of these rounds. And how do you dominate a guy for 4 minutes and then he gets up and lands 2 strikes and wins the round? But it's like, you know what? I thought he won. You thought he won. A lot of the fans thought he won. Combat Press, MMA Brazil, Sherdog, Mania, Junkie, Sherdog again, Couch Time Judges.
Let him know.
Combat
Let him
Press.
know, Cody.
No, they all had him too, is what I'm saying. Everybody had him winning other than the fucking judges that were sitting there. That one's tough to watch. With Jamie Mullarkey, there's a lot that you can like. First of all, he's only 26 years old. Certainly someone that's getting better. And you made good mention of this. So he has been knocked out. Alexander Volkanovski knocked him out. No shame in that. And then Luque Katibug knocked him out as well. Both those are 2016, right? So it's 5 years ago. He's 21 years old at the time. He comes from a pancration background, which I love because a lot of guys that are coming in with the base, they're coming in with a karate base or a kickboxing base or a wrestling base or a jiu-jitsu base. Like pancration is all the bases, right? It's everything. It's basically MMA. And he was actually the under 70 kilogram, under 21 years old at the World Pancration Championship. Mark is the champion, you know? I mean, he's a guy that's been born in the sport. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's well-rounding his game out. His striking is not as good as it needs to be. When he came to the UFC, I thought his technical boxing has improved a little bit, but I mean, really, they gave him no favors taking on Brad Riddell, and he got 30-26 on 2 judges' scorecards, got beat up, but chin wasn't an issue. It didn't look like this guy was chinny. This guy was durable. It was a fun fight, man, a very fun fight. He manages to take Brad Riddell down twice. Riddell pops back up, but he gives a good account of himself. And then that Zion fight, I mean, he scores 5 takedowns. Physically, he looks in good shape. Cardio, I mean, he's pushing a high pace the whole time. And when he needed the position, he got the position. When he needed the scramble, he got the scramble. I liked what I saw out of him. Unfortunately, the judges did not agree. So here's a guy that now goes to the room, and he's lost Alexander Volkanovski, getting knocked out by him, but he goes to train with him. He trains with the guy from City Kickboxing. He trains with Brad Riddell. Isn't it amazing that you lose to these guys and it's like, I'm going to go train with them and get better, because that's what you do. You try to get as best as you can. And again, he's only 26 years old, but I like the size of him, and I like that he's going to his wrestling and he's having success with it. So Zion's a striker. He takes him down 5 times. Brad Riddell's a striker. He takes him down twice. If you're a striker, he's going to get you down. Khama Worthy, I mean, one would imagine he's a striker. He is actually also a BJJ black belt, but he's 35 years old. He's got 7 pro losses, 6 of them by knockout, 1 of them by submission. That's his debut against my boy George Comer. Shout out. But everybody else, it's like they chin check him, he topples over. I don't think Jamie Mullarkey is going to go out there and chin check him, topple him over. So it's like he's going to have to grind this guy and get those takedowns and, you know, hopefully put a pace on him and put a beating on him. But I think it's very possible in doing that. And you mentioned best with Khama Worthy. You mentioned the Joey Munoz fight. That one's extremely important because Joey Munoz is way smaller than him. Joey Munoz is a guy that, he challenges himself over way too much. All of his losses are to bona fide guys. It's like that was a bad look for him, right? And then his other fights, right? Devontae Smith's a former training partner of Khama Worthy. So Devontae Smith goes in, doesn't let his hands go, super tentative. Khama Worthy gets the beat on and knocks him out. Nice win, but there's at least that narrative. The Luis Pena fight, the first round fights the worst game plan in the history of game plans. He doesn't do it. He stands there. He shoots no takedowns. He accepts everything. He very easily loses the first round on the basis of doing nothing. The second round, he's like, I should shoot a takedown. And he gets them. He actually takes Khama Worthy down 3 times. He secures his back. He puts the body triangle on. He controls him for the duration of the round. In the third round, I think he was tired. I think it was a bad wake up. I think he was tired. I think he was flustered. It's 1-1. You got everything to fight for. And he opts to not shoot a takedown until like 2 minutes left. Ends up getting snared up in a guillotine choke. Really bad move from Luis Pena, but it still showed that wrestling would be the key to victory here with Khama Worthy. He's got fast hands. He's got big power. But if he doesn't chin check, his volume's low. He keeps his hands way too low. His feet are very planted. You know, he's flat-footed in there. And so that allows him to get taken down easily. It allows him to generate a lot of power, but his movement's not quite there. Again, he is 35, almost 36 years old now. I just think that, listen, this is a card that I'm backing a lot of the favorites. I think that there's underdogs with chances, but I'm not pulling the trigger. And I think Jamie Mullarkey certainly got a chance. So the 2 angles that I'm looking at this one specifically is going to be fight goes the distance, which is plus 135. If Khama Worthy wins, does he knock out Jamie Mullarkey? Possible, but I'm going with this fight goes the distance plus 135, and then I took Jamie Mullarkey by decision plus 315. And I like me that because Khama Worthy's never lost a decision. That's why you're getting such a great line on it. But Khama Worthy's generally fought a lot of guys that had very heavy hands. Altman Azaitar is a dangerous power puncher. Kyle Nelson, we've seen the limited success he has had in the UFC. It's been absolutely thrashing these guys with big power. Anthony Reddish is a tough guy. Matt Bissett, UFC veteran. Billy Quantillo, UFC veteran. Paul Felder, enough said. Okay, those guys are knocking him out, sure. I mean, I'm not discrediting his chin here. I mean, they knocked him out relatively easy and a lot of the time very quick into these rounds. but they're not. It's not bums that are knocking him out. It's guys that are throwing these heavy hands. Jamie Mullarkey's not quite as heavy-handed, and his game plan seems to be a lot of grinding, take you down and grinding you. And we've seen with Khama where he does have the black belt. He did submit Luis Pena. He's not a fish out of water on his back. And Mullarkey's smart enough to realize when he gets these takedowns, hold them down, grind them down, beat him up on the ground, but don't let's get back up. So, yeah, if you're into money lines, we'll talk about this tomorrow. It's a dog or pass. You're getting a plus money straight up play on Mullarkey. You want to go for the straight up money. But we are here to talk about props. And so I think the two best props that I like on this one is fight goes the distance, plus 135, Mullarkey by decision, plus 350.
I'm kind of surprised that we're getting Mullarkey at plus 315. That's a very solid line, considering that's probably one of his best win conditions in the spot. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is a fight that we were scheduled to talk about originally, or we did talk about actually at UFC 258 on February 13th fight week. But now we got Gillian Robertson going up against Miranda Maverick. Same line, roughly. We got minus 160 here on Miranda Maverick, plus 140 on Gillian Robertson. But the spot that I like, and if you guys have been watching me for a while now, you guys know that I love hitting that under 2.5 on Gillian Robertson fights. It hasn't worked out to the best in her last couple fights. The Courtney Casey one misses by 1.5 minutes. The Poliana Botelho fight, Botelho just seemed okay with just losing the fight by staying on the ground, not really giving us any openings to go for a finish there. And then Tyler Santos just puts the beating on her, completely outmuscles her, and just grinds that fight out. Here against Miranda Maverick, though, I think that she'll have the same things to look out for in the Tyler Santos fight, which is, a big, strong girl like Miranda Maverick, and her Muay Thai is ever improving on a fight-to-fight basis, just like we saw in the Liana Jojua fight, where she just ripped her nose open with a beautiful step and elbow. Beautiful work there from Miranda Maverick. I'm really liking what I'm seeing out of her, and I think she's a very good prospect moving forward. But this fight is going to be violence from beginning to end. It's going to be Gillian Robertson throwing her 1-2 shots up there every now and then, no real pop or power behind them, but she's really she's really looking to get that single leg, that double leg, push you up against the cage, drag you to the ground, pull guard if need be. She wants to get the fight to the ground, and she wants to try to submit you. But in doing so, she usually leaves herself open and kind of overextends herself and allows her opponents to really go out there and take advantage of her in those situations. Miranda Maverick, I think she's just getting better everywhere. I think her wrestling is getting better on a fight-to-fight basis. I think her jiu-jitsu is getting better as well on a fight-to-fight basis. But her striking is truly where I think her strong suit, especially in this fight, will be. Gillian Robertson, is almost on Malcolm Gordon levels in terms of not liking to get hit, right? Whenever a punch touches their face, they're just reacting not well at all to it. And I think once Gillian Robertson truly feels the power of Miranda Maverick, she's going to start to turtle up really quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised if Maverick gets a TKO finish here either. And that's the prop that I like the most here. Plus 575 on Miranda Maverick to touch up Gillian Robertson. And that's the spot that I really like. The one that I'm actually officially betting as a tracked play myself is going to be the under 2.5 here at plus 150, just in case that there's a Gillian Robertson submission, which I think is live and a possibility given how offensive she normally is. But, she's not just training out of her garage anymore with Dean Thomas. She's making appearances over there at Fusion XL. She was helping out Hannah Goldie a lot, who I was expecting a lot of jiu-jitsu coming away from the Jessica Penne when they're originally scheduled to fight. But it's good that Gillian Robertson's going out there and getting other bodies and not just my man Dean Thomas, just having these one-on-one training sessions over and over again. She's got to expand her game. She's been in the UFC for several years now, and she's pretty much just plateaued, right? She goes out there and she either gets finished or she gets finished, or like in her last couple of fights, gets pushed to a decision. But I think Miranda Maverick here is really going to push her. She seems motivated in all interviews I've been seeing of her as of late. She's really saying she's going to go out there and try to get a second round TKO. And, a girl as confident her and as young as she is, I kind of believe it, right? I usually take a lot of things with a grain of salt when you're listening to fighters' interviews, because they just, I think MMA is probably one of those few sports where, like, more often than not, the interviewee is lying. Like, they're just saying, yeah, I had a great training camp. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But I'm starting to kind of believe that Miranda Maverick is on this mission to go out there and finish Gillian Robertson and continue to progress in this division in the UFC. But the spot that I like the most, like I said, the under 2.5 plus 150, I think that's a solid spot. But the one that I really like, especially here and giving you guys a nice little juicy prop, is Maverick to win by TKO at plus 575. I think that's the spot people should be hitting and be looking at. And then on the inverse, you got Gillian Robertson by submission, which is not too bad of a spot here. Gillian Robertson by submission is plus 375. So you're getting solid plus money on either either one of these girls getting a finish by their preferred method of finish, which is KO on Miranda's side, I believe, and then the submission on Gillian's side. How about you, buddy?
Okay, you know what? I had to disagree with you this one. I thought that the fight was probably going to go the decision, just because Gillian Robertson, again, she's been finishing just the putts of the division. You see her come to the UFC, it's like, oh, okay, well, she defeats Emily Whitmire and Molly McCann, beats Veronica Macedo, beats Sarah Frauda. Those are all inside the distance, but I mean, none of these are like notable victories in the slightest bit. The Courtney Casey win, huge win. You finish Courtney Casey, that ain't no easy task. But it's like there's 13 seconds left in the fight, and it's a really bad bonehead move by Courtney Casey, who realized she was losing the fight, just kind of tried to make a last second scramble and gave up her back and eventually got submitted. But I thought that one should have gone the distance. It did hit the over 2.5, but it really should have gone the distance. The Poliana Botello fight, it goes the distance. She didn't really seem too controlling in that fight. And the Taylor Santos fight, it's like she gets backed up, her striking, non-existent, reactionary takedowns, not good enough. Her wrestling is just not quite good enough. Here's someone who at ATT looked like sky was the limit, fighting limited competition, of course, but just looked like she was making a lot of improvements. She's still only 25 years old, like sky's the limit for her, but leaves ATT. I get she's still with Dean Thomas, but I've seen, like, I wouldn't even say a regression to her game. It's just like you said it perfectly yourself. It's just like plateaued. There's nothing more to her. The striking hasn't gotten any better. The wrestling hasn't gotten any better. She does have a black belt, but she needs to get you to the ground to utilize it. And the tougher level of competition that you start to face, it just becomes more difficult to do that kind of stuff. So Gillian Robertson very much is just at like a standpoint in her career where I just don't really see her moving on to take on the better girls of the division, but she's still going to be a problem if she can get her takedowns going. Against Miranda Maverick, I mean, yeah, the takedowns are definitely the key to victory here, but she's just very, very strong and improving very quickly. I mean, here's a girl that only turned pro. She started fighting amateur like a month after her 18th birthday. Just loved the sport. Turns pro just a handful of years ago. Fights in an Invicta one-night tournament. To see her lose to Deanna Bennett the first time around, and then the improvements from the first Deanna Bennett fight to the second Deanna Bennett fight was like, oh man, she's rapidly improving. But when you mention like her path to victory is the knockout, and the striking, and you think it's the under because Gillian Robertson might submit her, or you have the flip side of that, Miranda Maverick knocked her out. Miranda Maverick's never knocked out anybody. Her only career win by TKO is the cut stoppage against Joshua. And 1 is Joshua. 2, it's a cut stoppage. And 3, that's the only time. I mean, she prefers to use her own grappling. All of her wins are pretty much by submission. So is she going to try to take down Gillian Robertson's submitter? No. Is she just going to batter her standing? Yeah, but I mean, her striking hasn't really shown that finishing ability. So as far as the knockout goes, like I saw the Maverick by knockout was plus like 540. I was like, shit, man, just because you and I talk about this all the time, just because you don't normally do it doesn't mean you can't. Had you bet her to knock out Joshua, you'd be counting the money.
Chilling.
Yeah, because it hadn't happened to that point. You would have got a cheeky cut stoppage. But all the same, I mean, she came forward. She was aggressive. She let her hands go. And that's a problem for Gillian Robertson because you saw in the Macy Barber fight, you even saw in the Barb Honchak fight and Tough Once Upon a Time, it's like, be aggressive, hit her. It causes her to start to second guess herself. The Taylor Santos fight, Taylor nailed some really good shots. It's just that Gillian would continuously go to that reaction takedown, and Taylor would usually end up on top. It would just kill time away. Miranda Maverick, I mean, she's farm girl tough. She's very, very strong, probably someone that haze in the offseason, and she gets a hold of you like you're going to be in a lot of trouble. The other thing that I really like about this girl, I know some people will be like, oh, man, I prefer full-time fighters over somebody that's like splitting up their time. It's not like she has a job or anything, but she's actually like well-educated, Miranda Maverick. She's a really smart girl. So she's actually graduated from Drury University in Missouri with a major in psychology and sociology. And she currently is a student at Old Dominion going with industrial psychology. She's really smart. She's a very hard worker, and she really improves her game. So this fight gets booked a month ago, gets canceled. That only favors Maverick, dude. She's 23. She's training hard. She's making a lot of improvements, giving her more time to prepare for an opponent. That's not going to be good. The other thing there was Gillian Robertson that pulled out of the fight, getting tested positive for COVID. So like what? Was she laid up in a hotel for 2 weeks? Was she able to train? Did she have to cut weight all over again? Like, I would say it's got to be Miranda Maverick. The problem is I think Miranda Maverick's going to land those shots, and similar to Taylor Santos versus Gillian Robertson's just going to try to clinch, try to slow this thing down. The shots aren't going to quite put her away. She's not going to quite land enough takedowns to win the fight herself. But regardless, even if she did get the fight to the ground, she's not submitting my girl Miranda Maverick. So I'd like this fight to go the distance. With Gillian Robertson, last thing I'll say is that she's got like supreme confidence. You guys think Sean O'Malley's got confidence? No. This girl's a 2 out of 10. Yet you go on her Instagram, she is flaunting it like she's a dime piece. I don't know who's taking these pictures, but I hopefully Miranda Maverick just goes out there and does what she's capable of, backs her up, beats her up. Ultimately, things go to the decision. So you can chase that Miranda Maverick by decision, but I think that if you weren't completely sold on her takedown defense and you thought that it might still be a liability, you could just take the cop out and just take straight up, fight goes the distance. It's minus 150. If Miranda Maverick wins, probably by decision. Flip side of that, if Robertson wins, I don't think she's submitting her. I think she's landing takedowns. That's what's going to persuade the judges to give her the nod, but I don't think a submission sticks. So I know you got the inside the distance, the under 2.5. I think I'm going to go to the other way. Fight goes the distance, minus 150.
Just for reference, plus 525 was the line on Maverick to win by KO over Liana Jojua last time around. And I also do want to give a quick shout out to our guy, Tony Picks MMA, and the chat saying sociology is a bird class, and he is on point about that. So we know what Miranda Maverick's trying to do over there. I know she's working on her PhD or her master's or whatever it is, but yeah, sociology, bird class, I absolutely agree. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. And I think this is really where the card starts to pick up, right? Like it's a little bit lackluster throughout, and it's great for hardcores like ourselves, but in terms of the casual viewing fan, this is probably the fight that they're going to start to tune in for, and that's Sean O'Malley going up against Thomas Almeida, the ghost-ish of Thomas Almeida, especially considering that he's a plus 260 dog here against Sean O'Malley, who's coming in at minus 320. And man, if you told me 5 years ago that Thomas Almeida was going to be plus 260 against this frizzy-haired motherfucker that just keeps breaking his knee every time he goes out there, or is breaking his shin, whatever the hell, I'd be like, you guys are absolutely crazy. Thomas Almeida was highly touted and highly, seen as this guy that was going to be this bantamweight wrecking crew. Like if you guys remember going into that main event spot against Cody Garbrandt, he was a minus 200 favorite. Everybody was on the Almeida train. I believe that was a fight where he was coming off of that flying knee knockout of Brad Pickett and truly cemented himself as one of those guys at 135 pounds. And then Garbrandt knocks him out. Then he comes back with the win over Albert Morales, and that was a solid one for him. He comes in as a minus 300 favorite in that fight, and he truly went out there and did what he was supposed to do, and luckily he got the finish to kind of uphold that minus 300. Then he goes on a 3-fight losing streak, but can you really blame him? Losing to guys like Jimmy Rivera and Rob Font, takes several, I believe, just over a 2.5-year layoff after the Rob Font fight, comes back and loses to Jonathan Martinez. And I believe during that time off, he was getting some invasive eye surgery or something like that, like something to do with one of his lead eyes that he was trying to get repaired. And that's what was keeping him out of the cage for as long as it was. And then he comes in against Jonathan Martinez. What does Martinez do? Just batter that lead eye, and it was just, bleeding within the first minute of that fight. And I think that was a good, kind of shake off your rust type of matchup for Thomas Mayer to go out there and be like, okay, I can still take damage to this eye. And, now I know what it feels like. Now, maybe this is the fight where we see him, come out and actually showcase not old school Thomas Almeida, but at least a glimpse of it compared to what we saw in the Jonathan Martinez fight. He really did not let his game go in that Martinez fight. Martinez did a good job of keeping him on the outside with his long strikes. We didn't see any glimpse of the vintage Thomas Almeida, right? The guy that used to rip the leg kicks and throw all this spinning flying shit and just, have a very solid Muay Thai game. And if he brings, again, I said this earlier in the week on my own show, 80 to 85% of Thomas Almeida gives Sean O'Malley a bit of a run for his money here, where he's just ripping that leg, maybe testing that shin out of Sean O'Malley, who seems to have a chronic issue with it, right? You got the Andre Sukumtov fight, you have the Marlon Vera fight last time around, and even on the regional scene, there's pictures of him getting stretchered out or helped out of the cage because he keeps fucking up his foot. Who knows what the true genesis of that injury is, but it seems to keep popping his ugly head every now and then, right? So I'm not sure how you can trust O'Malley at minus 320 on the money line side of it, but if you want to look at it from a props perspective, him knocking out Thomas Almeida is probably the most likely outcome here. Plus 115 is a very good spot. He does such a good, as much as what Dunn says he is outside of the cage, the guy is such a master inside the cage. He sets up traps very well. The way he knocked out Eddie Wineland was a thing of beauty, faking the uppercut and then coming with the overhand. His movement is great when he's really getting it going. And even in that first little bit in the Marlon Vera fight, he's having tons of success. And then once Marlon Vera realizes that the guy's starting to limp and really favoring his leg, that's where Marlon Vera starts to turn on his jets, and then he crashes forward and really starts putting it on Sean O'Malley. So again, I think that the line is just way too wide here. I think the KO prop is proper, plus 115. I think that's not too bad, but I'm not counting out Thomas Almeida as much as other people are, which is why I'd rather go with the under 2.5 here at minus 150. I think it's going to be a violent fight. I think it's going to be on the feet for the most part. Highly doubt we see Thomas Almeida try to drag this fight to the ground and try to just grind out Mr. O'Malley. I think it's going to be a stand-up fight. Both guys are live for a finish here. I'm going to side with the O'Malley side just because, not the greatest showing for Thomas Almeida last time around, but we do have to give him the slight benefit of the doubt, given it was his first fight back after all these crazy surgeries on his eye, right? So I'll go with O'Malley. I'll go with knockout plus 115. I think that's a solid spot. But if you want to cover both sides, under 2.5 at minus 150, I think that's a very solid spot as well, too. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I agree. I think Sean O'Malley either wins, probably by knockout, or Sean O'Malley busts his leg, because that's like the other side of the coin. Yeah, he's had 4 fights in the UFC over the last 3 years, and 2 of them have ended with leg injuries. Mind you, he did win the Andre Sukmantath fight, but all Suk had to do was stand up, man. We've talked about questionable ring IQ on this show with a couple fighters, but like Sukmantath has by far the worst ring IQ that's ever graced the octagon. Quite literally, he just had to stand up. And so that's a problem with Sean O'Malley, is that he seems a tad bit fragile. When you see like how bony and thin, I guess the term would be chicken legs, like dude has straight up chicken legs. Now, according to him, he rolled his own ankle against Marlon Vera. According to Marlon Vera, I seized him up with the calf kick. So it's like, which one was it? If it was the calf kick narrative, it's like he's out of the MMA lab. I mean, they're known for the calf kick. Surely he's faced this many of times. And if it's the he rolled his own ankle narrative, you would chalk it up as a fluke. But the fact that it's happened in 2 of the 4 fights, it's a liability at this point. When you want to bet him at minus 320, it's like we don't need these red flags or these what ifs. And Sean O'Malley looks like he's got the skills. It's just like maybe he's a tad bit fragile. Now everyone wants to talk about he looked awesome against Marlon Vera until the leg injury. Yeah, he looked awesome against Marlon Vera until he got the leg injury. But like who hasn't looked awesome against Marlon Vera in the first round of the fight? Marlon Vera gives up the first round in every fight, doesn't really get going. Sean O'Malley looked spectacular, I guess. He stays to the outside. He's got long punches. He's got straight punches. He packs a lot of power. When you see him at his best, there's no doubt about it. Say the Eddie Wineland fight. Eddie Wineland's old at this point. He's chinny. He fights with both of his hands low. He's a tailor-made opponent for a guy like Sean O'Malley. But he moves forward, a little bit reckless at times, and he gets intercepted. When I think about Thomas Almeida, I think, Jesus, the same thing. Thomas Almeida, only 29, but he's a shoot-to-box style fighter. These guys have the same style. They're plodding. They're heavy on their feet. They move in linear, straight lines. They don't cut angles. They don't have that great footwork. And beyond that, a lot of their strikes, they throw a lot of hooks. Thomas Almeida likes to throw a lot of hooks. And so a lot of the times, guys will beat him to the punch. When you look at his run, I mean, really, he looked like he was going to be the shit. Everybody was super high on him. Really spectacular. Beats Tim Gorman in his debut. Gorman, the guy with the DUI, never fought again. Okay, yeah, not exactly a spectacular win. No longer with the organization. Yves Jean-Bouin, our boy, Canadian hero, very clearly hasn't been in the organization for 5+ years for a very good reason, right? Brad Pickett, he's long since retired. Brad Pickett dropped him. That's notable, right? Yeah. Cody Garbrandt, he was a 3-1 favorite over Cody Garbrandt. He gets dropped again. That's the second time he got dropped. He got knocked down that fight. Jimmy Rivera dropped him twice. Didn't knock him out. Rob Font dropped him twice, did knock him out. So now you look at a guy that's actually been dropped 6 times in his UFC career, right? His chin, not exactly great. His shots, his defense, not very good. Doesn't move his head. And a lot of his punches are hooks. They're very looping. So a guy that's quick, that's refined, good, accurate, fast striker is going to knock him out. Cody Garbrandt, he's got good boxing, very technical, very sharp. Doesn't have a good chin himself. But as far as his striking goes, he's very sharp, he's very accurate, he's very fast. He just beats him with a punch, knocks him out, relative ease. Rob Font's the exact same way. Beats him with a punch, knocks him out with relative ease. Jonathan Martinez, you see how much success Jonathan Martinez has moving laterally, right? Play that matador, let him come to you, beat him with a punch. Now, you can make the excuse that he'd been off nearly 3 years. You can make the excuse that it was ring rust and this and that. Ultimately, I just didn't think Thomas Almeida looked any good in that fight. And so for Sean O'Malley, it's the same thing here. Stay to the outside, use that crispness, beat this guy to the punch. He's only got a 2-inch reach advantage. I think it's 72 for O'Malley versus 70 for Thomas Almeida, but it's 5'11" for Sean O'Malley versus 5'7" for Thomas Almeida. Yeah. He's really going to have to close the distance by walking through the pocket. And what's going to happen when he tries to walk through the pocket to Sean O'Malley? He's going to get countered. So I would have to say Sean O'Malley by knockout. I don't love the 320. But the Sean O'Malley by knockout is plus 115. So it's plus money. If you want to get bold and chase out under 1.5 or a first round knockout, that's up to you. But it just seems like hopefully he catches him at some point. As far as parlay material, he's not a top ticket lock, right? I think he's going to win, but the leg injury is a big question. The other problem is that a lot of his fights, they all end relatively early. So if Almeida is able to get this to the second or third round, maybe he makes it interesting. But let's not forget O'Malley, he's still got this undefeated mentality, right? He's still, he's still got this self-belief in himself. But beyond all that, he disrespected Marlon Vera, right? He treated him like he was a nobody. He dyed his hair like it was the Ecuadorian flag. He talked a whole lot of shit, and then he had to step in there with a top 10 guy. Right, not top 10 guy, top 15 guy, only because bantamweight single-handedly the greatest division in the entire sport. But still, I mean, he fought a legitimate guy, Marlon Vera. He disrespected him. He didn't show him any love, and he had to pay the price. Coming into this fight, he very much seems like, I love this quote from him. He's like, don't bet me. I don't want you to bet me. And at first I was just like, the fuck's he talking about? But what it is the same thing that you and me face all the time, right? You say, oh, I'm picking this guy. It gets it wrong. And somebody's like, oh man, you were wrong. So he went on record before the Marlon Vera fight being like, I'm going to beat this guy. Bet me. And now he says to this day, people still message him like, yo, you owe me $1,000 because I lost. So he's like, don't bet on me. Bet on the other guy. Bet on the other guy. Bet on the other guy. See what happens. And to me, I like that. That's like that little chip where it's just like, I know what I'm capable of. I know what I'm able to do. But instead of going out and talking all this shit, I'm going to let my performance speak for itself. And that's always what he should have been doing. That's what everybody should be doing. Talking game is great. It sells jerseys. It sells merchandise. Sean O'Malley's got a great little outlet for additional income. You know, he plays video games. He's got his own podcast. He's got all these great things. But ultimately, the talking needs to be done inside the octagon. It seems like he's got his head a little more on straight. Yeah, he's still feuding with Megan Anderson. Yeah, he's still
no longer a peer though. No longer a peer or a coworker. So maybe you're allowed to say it now. I don't know.
Yeah, but when you see Kyler Phillips and the shit that guy's capable of, and you see Casey Kinney and the amount that work ethic is just coming through from him, and you see these fringe guys in the gym that have really made a good reputation for himself. Jared Cannonier only got there late, and the improvements he's made. MMA Lab is a very type-specific gym. They've taken mid-level talent and taken them to the highest levels. And I think that Sean O'Malley is the kind of guy that's got the skill. He's got the prospect status to really put it all together. It's just he will be his own enemy. Actually, he's his second worst enemy. His spotty fucking leg is his biggest enemy. Dude, don't hurt your leg. Do what you're capable of. I've got O'Malley. I'll take O'Malley by knockout to try to chase. I don't want the 3-1, so I'll have to chase that plus 115 O'Malley knockout.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. Again, Thomas Almeida, I'm always going to be a fan for him, no matter how far off the cliff he's fallen. But this is a good matchup and a good test for Thomas Almeida to actually go, for Sugar Sean O'Malley to go out there and actually showcase that he should be a -300 favorite. And he's going to go out there and do what he's supposed to do, which is knock this guy out. All right, let's go on to the co-main event here, which should have been a featherweight title fight between Alexander Volkanovski and our guy Brian Ortega. Unfortunately, that fight gets pulled out. And we are left with our favorite Barriault pal, Tyron Woodley, going out there and trying to right his wrongs, where he's coming off of a 3-fight losing streak right now. He's taking on Vicente Luque, a different stylistic matchup than he's used to over his last 3 fights, where, you know, he's going up against Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns, guys that are mainly grapplers. And, you know, outside, I'd say Burns was probably the best striker out of all those guys with the amount of power that he had. And it definitely showed in the Woodley fights, where he was able to continuously knock him down and just have a lot of success there. Now, Vicente Luque is not going to have that crazy cardio wrestling pace that Woodley's had to endure over the last several fights, but he does have a very good skill set when it comes to the striking. One of the best Muay Thai fighters out there, but he has accrued a ton of damage in his UFC career. Never got knocked out, has gotten knocked down twice in his career, I believe, over by Wonder Boy once, and then once by Brian Barberena, which probably doesn't look the greatest on your record, but he did a good job of getting back into the game there and then still winning that fight. I believe he stopped him very, very late in that fight. But Vicente Luque is an absolute monster, an absolute beast. But it seems like when he comes to that level of fighting the guys that are the next level, like the Wonder Boy Thompson, which was the most recent one that he had, he kind of comes up short. Luckily for him, he's going up against Tyron, non-active Woodley here, who just doesn't throw anything. And, you know, if he had any reason to throw anything, it would have been his last fight against Colby Covington. You got a guy, you know, that everybody in the world hates, talking all this shit about you, even way back to when, like, Tyron Woodley was still champ. He's calling him NyQuil Woodley and all that type of stuff. And, you know, that wasn't enough to ruffle his feathers and really get his striking, or at least get even a little bit of output out of him in that Colby Covington fight. And if there's any fight, like I said, that was going to be the one. But maybe this is the one where it's just like, okay, it's going to be my 4th straight loss. Do I truly want to have that on my record? And I might be on the chalk beam block too. So, you know, if I lose this fight, I'm probably heading on over to Bellator or any other promotion that's willing to take me at this point. But you got to, it truly comes down to how he fights, right? Historically speaking, all we've ever seen from him is that he just backs up, and relies on that big power hand. And if it doesn't land, more often than not, he goes on to lose the fight, or he lands, knocks his opponent out, or steals around like he did in the Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fights, or leads to a submission like he did against Darren Till. The only freaking time I've ever been Tyron Woodley to win by KO, he goes out there and dart strokes fucking Darren Till. But it just shows that, the guy still has power in his hands. That's something we always have to respect him for. No matter how much he goes out there and doesn't throw, there's always that hesitancy that he could knock his opponent out. Now, in terms of a Woodley by KO, plus 650 is not bad at all. When you're talking about laying the juice on Vicente Luque here at minus 255, or even taking him to win by decision, which I believe is around that plus 200 mark, hedging it with a plus 650, which is probably the only way that Tyron Woodley wins this fight, is not a bad idea. I am still taking Luque to win this fight. I do like that decision prop. Plus 230 is a very good spot. I don't know if he'll finish Woodley as bad of a fighter as we continuously say he is. His durability is still there. Outside of popping his rib against Colby Compton, more often than not, the guy's able to stick around and go the full 15 or 25 minutes if it's required. I like Luque in this fight. I'll definitely say that. And I don't think that Woodley's going to win this fight. But again, plus 650 just to cover the case he does actually go out there and knock his opponent out, I think is not too bad of an approach. So I'll go Luque. I'll go decision plus 230. But minus 255. I wish the line was slightly better on the money line. Like minus 200 probably would have been a little bit better. But how can you truly give much respect to Woodley here, given how he's looked over his last several fights? So I'll go Luque. Decision plus 230. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the biggest Tyron Woodley hater going, and that ain't going to change now. But what I'm about to tell you is going to sound like I'm, giving Tyron Woodley a chance. He does have a chance. This is a prize fight, but yeah, there's a couple of variables that I like about him here. First of all, I've made a lot of money fading this guy over the last 3, but he fought the best guys available, right? Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman, the number 1 and 2 guys in the entire world. So losing to them, no shame. Gilbert Burns is like number 6 in the world, let's say. He's definitely not a top 5 guy, but he just fought for a title, I guess. You got to give him some credence. And yeah, I mean, he loses that fight as well. But these are at least top guys. They all can wrestle. They all can grapple, right? So with Tyron Woodley, he can wrestle himself, but he's not taking down Usman. He's not taking down Covington. Probably wouldn't want to take down Gilbert Burns. You're taking a weapon off the table. Other thing is he's super tentative. Everybody knows it. He wall rides and, fix the right hand. Wall rides, fix the right hand. Wall rides, fix the right hand. Super annoying. No output out of him. This is the first time in 6.5 years he's been scheduled for a 3-round fight. So you made a great case. He's 0-3 in his last 3 fights in the UFC. His back up against the wall. Anthony Pettis just got cut. Junior DeSantos just got cut. Alistair Overeem just got cut. You think they're going to keep you, Tyron Woodley? 39-year-old Tyron Woodley? Absolute stinker of a fighter. Not only did he suck ass in the last 3 fights, he loses every single round. He loses every single minute of every single round. Both of his wins against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he lost. He lost the first one 3 rounds to 2, but a 10-8 got him a draw. And the second one, it was very poor judging in what is perhaps the worst title fight you've ever seen. Worst title fight, assuming you've never seen the Damian Maia fight, where he does absolutely nothing. It's potentially the worst fight you've ever seen. Darren Till fight. Darren Till shouldn't have been in a UFC headlining a title fight, first of all. Darren Till, that fight lasted 9 minutes and 19 seconds. Darren Till landed 0 significant strikes.
Yeah.
Was that a great performance by Tyron Woodley, or did Darren Till absolutely not throw any strikes? You're right, because Darren Till is not a welterweight. He's a massive man. He fights at middleweight now for a very specific reason. He had a bad weight cut, his body shutting down because he had to make championship weight. Tyron Woodley's just been the beneficiary of bad spots. His fights are almost always universally boring. Why would we possibly bet this guy? His back's up against the wall. But that's why it makes him a live dog. Because
let me just insert one thing about the Darren Till fight, and I'll let you continue going. The time that he finally let his hands go is when Tyron Woodley drops him. He lets go on a combination where he just leads with the lead uppercut that leaves his shit exposed. You see Tyron Woodley drop him right after that, and then follow up with his ground and pound, and then eventual submission. But yeah, you're right. Darren Till did nothing in that fight, didn't throw anything in that first round, and then second round when he actually throws something, gets knocked down, and then gets dragged out that way. But yes, please continue. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and I know some of the people in the comment section is why is he shooting in on Tyron Woodley? But it's you've obviously never watched the show before. When I talk about Tyron Woodley, he's no good. He's potentially the worst champion in UFC history. He actually got the Robbie Lawler fight, his title fight. He got it after squeaking by a split decision in one of the worst fights you've ever seen over a Kelvin Gastelum who spent the night in hospital, right?
Yeah.
The fucking night in hospital comes out and squeaks out a split decision. That's how he even got the title fight. He's never been good. There's nothing left to offer. The one thing that it's because you hate somebody, you can't lead into a false sense of confidence. So what he's got going for him is, first of all, this is a 3-round fight. So because he's on a 3-fight losing streak, because his contract's on the line, because he's probably going to get cut, he could come in as a wounded dog. When you back a dog into a corner, it comes out, right? And that's the thing with Woodley. When you back this guy up, eventually he might let his hands go. If he does let his hands go, he's got big power. And so with Vicente Luque, it's not only that he got dropped by Brian Barberena, it's that he almost lost the Brian Barberena fight. He got hit, just to give you the exact stat, he got hit 169 significant times by Brian Barberena, okay? Funny, right? Mike Perry loses a split decision against him. Mike Perry busts him up. One of the least technical guys you've seen in the division just comes forward and just batters Vicente Luque, who universally takes too much damage. The Stephen Thompson fight, he got dropped, sure, but he got hit 138 significant times. Nico Price hit him 129 significant times. It's like, dude, all he does is get hit. So with Woodley, he doesn't let his hands go, but if for whatever reason he decides to let his hands go in this spot, he's going to hit. When he does hit, he does have a lot of power. So Vicente Luque, he's susceptible to at least get hit. Potentially, the shot gives it a lot of damage. The other problem that I'm not loving here with Vicente Luque is this takedown defense. He got taken down by Randy Brown. He got taken down by Nico Price. He got taken down by Derek Krantz. He got taken down 3 times by Leon Edwards. No shame in that. But even in his debut against Michael Gray, 7 takedowns given up. A lot of the times he fights strikers. He's not fighting good wrestlers. He's not fighting guys that are able to take him down. Woodley has the wrestling. Woodley doesn't use his wrestling anymore because he's so tired of gassing out. His cardio's awful. He doesn't use his wrestling anymore. But in a 3-round fight, Manpreet, maybe, just maybe, he decides to wrestle. If he lets his hands go and he wrestles, he's got the championship experience. He's very durable, like you mentioned. And why could he not hurt Vicente Luque, complete a takedown, hold him down? Guy's a BJJ black belt. You've seen the submission win over Darren Till. Beyond that, keep the position and win a couple of these rounds. You mean to tell me Brian Barberena is in a close competitive fight? You mean to tell me Mike Perry arguably got lost and that Tyron Woodley couldn't make something happen? So again, I don't like Tyron Woodley. I never have. The guy in the prime of his career didn't want to fight the number 1 contender. He opted to fight Damian Maia. He was calling out Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor instead of wanting to fight the top welterweights in the world. He's a fucking fraud. And he sits there on TMZ like he has no idea what he's talking about. All his press conferences like, Tyron, how does this camp feel? Black Lives Matter. It's like, man, come on. Like, I get
not doing any favors for yourself. Yeah.
No. And then he'd just be like, oh, I'm a rapper now. And remember, he just like, they were booing him and he'd be like, oh, I made a new song. Boo, boo, boo. He's just so hateable.
I know.
So if you're going to be hateable, right? If you're going to be a Sean O'Malley, if you're going to be someone who's brash, go in there and do the talking in the ring, like we talked about. Do the talking in the ring. Only Woodley has an epic, legendary rivalry with Colby Covington. I hate this man.
Yeah.
Same result. Doesn't let his hands go. Backs up. Doesn't do anything. And then in the 5th round, where Pride should have been able to hold him on, he said, my rib hurts. I don't want to be here anymore. He's 39. His best days are behind him. Luque on volume alone probably eats him away. But like, I'm smart enough to not just let my blind rage, my heart. It can't. In this game, you gotta play out every angle, and the angles that I've mentioned for you make Tyron Woodley technically a live underdog. So I think this fight goes the distance, -140. I say that because if Luque wins, it's only a 3-round fight. With Woodley, he has been really durable. Outside of Nate Marquardt butchering him with elbows once upon a time and a rib injury, he does have that durability. Luque also puts a beating on a lot of these guys and doesn't knock them out. So I would have to say that if Luque wins a fight, I think he just, volume wins him out the day. He wins a 15-rounder. If Woodley springs the upset, I know a lot of people are talking about the knockout plus 650, why not? He's got the hands and all that. Well, one thing with Luque is like he's been dropped a few times, but like dude wears damage, man. Like he gets hit and he keeps chugging on the best of his abilities. He's also got much better cardio with Woodley, and Woodley's the kind of guy that if he hits you, he's not going to swarm you. He's not going to try to put you away right away. He's going to try to conserve some of that gas in the tank, right? Because he has the worry of getting gassed out. So the play's going to be Vicente Luque. Got Vicente Luque by decision. I don't like the Luque straight up money line. I think it's a little overblown because of all the recent hate for Tyron Woodley. So yeah, I would go to decision, and that's going to give me a plus money tag. And last but not least, I mean, guys that have been following the show for a long time, like I was all over Kamaru Usman. I gave Tyron Woodley a 0% chance of winning, right? I was all over Gilbert Burns. I gave Tyron Woodley a 5% chance of winning. I was all over Colby Covington. I gave him effectively a 0% chance of winning. And now everybody's giving him that 0%. And like now it's like there's the real, why am I giving him props in this fight, right? Like the last 3 fights, I wasn't giving any points for Woodley winning. It's like he's done. But this is styles make fights. Styles always make fights. Gilbert can grapple. Covington can grapple. Usman can grapple. This is a different case than Vicente Luque. So maybe Woodley can flip that little tool in his back pocket. Again, when you're on the last fight of your deal, Your back's up against the wall. You could potentially get released from the promotion. You're 39 years old. Everyone's laughing at you. Sometimes you come out as a changed man. We seen that with Ayman Zahabi a few weeks back. He's looked awful in the UFC. Everyone's laughing at him. He shouldn't be at this level. He's going to get released after he loses this fight against Draco. And he goes out there and he just lets his hands go. And honestly, sometimes
Fry, same thing. Junior Fry goes out there, gets a big win. Like it's happening where we just continuously overlook these fighters when they're on a bit of a rough stretch, and we completely neglect the skills that they do have. They just haven't shown it over the last several fights. So I do like that wrestling angle that you were saying with Woodley. Personally, I don't think he has the cardio to actually do it for 2 rounds out of the 3. But it is an angle. Like I just don't believe in his cardio at all. I think it's definitely going to fall off a cliff if he tries to go for it right off the bat. Maybe the angle is just literally throw nothing in that first round, give it away, and then try to do it for the next 2 rounds. That's probably the way to go about it. But I think me and you are on the same page here, where we got Luque plus 230 via decision. Because again, as bad as Woodley is, the guy is durable. He can take a shot. He's been knocked down. He keeps coming back, but he just does throw nothing in response. So I'm glad that we're both on the same side here with with Luque, and in agreement that the line is a little bit wide, but the props are not too bad at plus 230. For Luque to win by decision. All right, before we get into the main event here for the heavyweight title, we got 320 people in the chat. You guys are freaking awesome. A little bit hostile in there right now, but hope you guys keep it PG. Make sure you guys hit the like if you haven't already. That shows us a ton of support. I'm trying to get to 150 by the end of the stream. We're at 126, so we could definitely do it. Let's do it all together. Make sure you guys hit that like, show us some support. All right, let's get to the heavyweight title fight in the main event here. We got Stipe Miocic going up against Francis Ngannou. The last time we saw these guys was at UFC 220 way back in January of 2018. That was the same night that we saw Daniel Cormier go out there and wrestle one Volkan Oezdemir as well. That was in Boston, I remember. But since then, we've seen Stipe Miocic go out there, lose to Daniel Cormier, and then beat Daniel Cormier twice. And then on the flip side for Francis Ngannou, we saw him go out there and throw a no-hitter against Derek Lewis, where he just threw, I think he landed 11 strikes over 15 minutes in that fight. And then he goes on and continue his wreckage, which is a 45-second knockout of Curtis Blades for the second time, I should say. 26-second knockout of Cain Velasquez for some goddamn reason decided to come back on his bum knee in 2019. Then he goes out there and knocks out Junior Dos Santos in a minute and 10 or 11 seconds in June of 2019. And then he takes roughly a year off and just bomb rushes Jairzinho Rozenstruik with probably the worst technique you'll ever see. Chin up in the air, doesn't give a fuck about whatever Jairzinho is throwing in return, because he knows that his lunch pails that he call fists are going to land way harder and probably knock his opponent out. And that's exactly what happened in that Rozenstruik fight. And now here he is, deserving of a title shot once again. But how much can we say he's improved? We just don't see it. Like, the most improvement, or the only thing that we've seen different from him from the first time we fought Stipe to now, is he threw a couple leg kicks against Junior Dos Santos. What does that fucking tell us? Nothing. It tells us nothing. It shows us nothing about his cardio, because that's something that could potentially be tested here if he's not able to get Stipe out of there in that first round. And then two, has he worked on his grappling? Has he worked on his wrestling? People want to make this big hoopla that Kamaru Usman's going to be in his corner for this fight. He was in his corner for the Junior Dos Santos fight too. So what the fuck are we talking about? Like, it's not like a first thing that's happening where Usman's in his corner. But yeah, I'm not sure how we can legitimately go out there and bank that Francis is going to be able to, have cardio in the second and third round if he gets stretched that far, that we're going to be able to bank on that he has takedown defense and he's going to stop whatever Stipe throws his way. Like, Stipe did some really good things in that first fight. A lot of people are kind of overlooking. His head movement looked great. He was expecting and knew the combinations that were coming his way, and he evaded the big strikes perfectly. And then whenever he shot, he did the one thing that Curtis Blades needed to do to not get knocked out by Derek Lewis, and that's shoot on the weak side of your opponent and not on the strong side of your opponent, so you don't get blasted to the moon by an uppercut. And he did that pretty much every time he entered on a takedown on Francis, and it saved him. He did get clipped a couple times when going for those takedowns, but the brunt of those shots were truly taken off because he was shooting on the other side of Francis Ngannou. But I think that we've seen a little bit more from Stipe. Yeah, he's taken some damage in those DC fights, and if anything, I thought he got better with every DC fight. Obviously, gets knocked down in that first fight. Second fight, he's losing that fight going into the third round. Then he starts switching it up to the body, championship mentality to go out there and make adjustments on the fly. Really start digging to the body, and then eventually knocking him out in the fourth round. And then the third fight against DC drops that first round, but after that, sweeps the scorecards, winning all 4 rounds, I believe, at least rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5. And he showed, solid things, great clinch up against the cage, double underhooks, and really kind of frustrating Daniel Cormier in those situations. His boxing looked on point. And most notably, his cardio looked really good. I faded him against Daniel Cormier the first time around because I wasn't impressed with his cardio in the Francis fight. I'm like, you got a dead guy in front of you, and you're pretty much the next best dead guy beside him because you're not, completely falling over and dying on us in the cage. But I think his cardio has been getting better in these last 3 fights that we've seen him in. And I think that could come into play here because I think if he survives that first round against Francis again, I think we'll see him actually finish this fight probably in the 3rd or 4th round, ground and pound TKO. That's kind of the angle that I'm taking here. So I do side with Stipe. Plus 110 is not too bad on the money line here. But if we want to get into specific props, Miocic by TKO is plus 215, and then round props, you obviously know those are going to be juicy. Miocic round 3 plus 925, Miocic round 4 plus 1325, Miocic round 5 plus 1925. I see a lot of people just saying Francis first round or Miocic decision. I think they're kind of overlooking the improvements that I've personally been seeing from Miocic in his last 2 fights, who is against a guy in Daniel Cormier who, miles better than Francis Ngannou when we're talking about skill and the amount of threats that he has to deal with. Whereas, Francis Ngannou, he zigged when he should have zigged in the first fight, zagged when he should have zagged in the first fight. But in this one, he's going to have to make sure he does the same thing. Stay away from the big shots. And if he's able to survive that first round and a half, I'll give Francis 7.5 minutes just to be fair. But I think he gets past that, and then he eventually goes out there, grinds him out, and gets a third. I personally, I said 3rd round TKO. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's 4th or 5th round. But I think he's going to get those takedowns, get this fight to the ground, get some ground and pound going, and get Francis out of there. There's no way Francis goes out there and gives us a solid 5 rounds of cardio. There's absolutely no way. I'd be very surprised if we saw Francis win this fight by decision. So on the inverse here, if you are looking to back Francis, I think you're leaving money on the table if you don't take Francis by KO. Now it's at minus 105. Earlier in the week is plus 105. But taking him to win straight compared to by KO, like, you can say whatever you want. You're not convincing me that Ngannou is winning by submission or decision. Maybe by submission to strikes, possibly, but by decision, I just don't see it happening. I think Miocic pretty much has him covered everywhere else. The floor is yours. Let us know what you guys think about the main event here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a heavyweight fight. It's a heavyweight fight where you're dealing with potentially having to fade Francis Ngannou, and so luckily it's the main event. So I would hopefully run out and get a new pair of pants before this starts because probably going to be a sweat and potentially shit. This is tough, man. I got Stipe. Stipe's my guy. And we're both 3rd-generation Croatians. I back him every time. I had him the last time against Francis Ngannou based on the cardio and the wrestling. But this time you're running it back. I mean, Stipe is 39 years old. Beyond that, I mean, he's super hittable, man. He's kind of always been hittable. You look at the first Junior Dos Santos fight. You look at him getting knocked out by Stefan Struve. You looked at him getting caught by Daniel Cormier. But you want to talk about the last 2 fights of Cormier, the rematch and the trilogy. Man, he's getting lit up really, really badly by Daniel Cormier. The second fight, it only lasted 4 rounds. It didn't really go the 5-round distance. He got hit 181 significant times. Even in the rematch, 105 significant strikes given to Daniel Cormier, who just kind of looked like he was at the end of the road in that fight. All I'm saying is that it's not like he's a defensive marvel. He's not no Floyd Mayweather. He's going to go out there. He's going to get hit. It's regardless. It's if he's going to be able to take those shots and persevere and get these takedowns. The last time he fought Francis Ngannou, he got hit. He did get wobbled, but he got those takedowns. He got 6 takedowns. He got them when he wanted to. He largely controlled Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou got tired. The difference there, I guess if you were to talk about a difference, who's made the improvements? Stipe was the champion at the time. Stipe was already at the highest level at the time. Stipe was technically speaking for a heavyweight in the prime of his career at the time. And he exposed a young, undefeated guy that had clear holes in his games but hadn't quite realized it yet. But Francis Ngannou was full-time out of Paris, France at the time, right? He hadn't really pushed himself to a physical level in terms of his training. Now, for the last 2 or 3 years, he's been at Extreme Couture in Las Vegas. And honestly, physically, you look at him, he's in tremendous shape. He has been working a lot on his cardio. He has been working a lot on his wrestling. Vinny Magalesh is his BJJ coach now. He always had a good guard. You look back at his early fights where he does get taken down, he just puts you in guard and kind of like holds on. That's his one good thing about him. When he does get taken down, he doesn't give up a whole lot of damage. When Stipe takes him down, he's not knocking him out. He's just got him tired and he beats on him. So you run this thing back 3 years later. I mean, Francis Ngannou is actually 34 years old himself. He's not exactly super young, but I would have assumed that if one of them made improvements, it would be Francis. And if Francis even made marginal improvements from the first fight, he's going to stuff a few takedowns. He's going to land some of those shots. Why can't he knock out Stipe? It's hard to have great faith in Stipe considering Stefan Struve knocked him out, but the DC fight, right? He's a natural light heavyweight who technically speaking has the frame of a middleweight, maybe even a welterweight, but let's be generous here. He's got the frame of a middleweight, and he just cold cocks you with one short shot from the clinch and it knocks Stipe out. To me, that's the danger here, because we've got heavyweights. Everybody's got a puncher's chance, but with Francis Ngannou, he's just like, it's times 10, you know? I mean, he's just got that powers on full display. But you see him in the Arizona Rosenstruck fight, it's super sloppy, right? Cain Velasquez, why was Cain even in that spot? You look at some of these wins he's had, he hasn't fought outside of the first round since the Derek Lewis fight, which he did nothing. And then prior to that, the Stipe fight, in which he got tired. So how could we bank on that? Yeah, he's been working on his cardio. He's been working on his takedown defense. But because we haven't seen it, it's all just an idea, a what if, could have, should have, would have, but we haven't seen it yet. With Stipe, his 2 fights with Daniel, yeah, I'll say he took a lot of damage, but my God, the perseverance on this man, the desire to win, the durability, you need to knock him out or he is not going anywhere. And that's why us Croatians are proud of the guy. He's just got that never say die attitude. He loses the first 3 rounds in the rematch against Cormier. And the 4th round, this is the best too. They talked to his coach, they talked to his corner, and they're like, oh, you guys saw that the body shots were open? And he's like, no, he saw that himself. I didn't even say anything about body shots. That's something he realized throughout the course of the round and just switched up to an almost exclusive bodywork attack in the 4th round. Stipe is a smart guy. He can make those adjustments. In the Ngannou fight, when he starts to get tired himself, when he starts to get hit a little bit, he just knows how to get that takedown. In the trilogy match with Daniel Cormier, I thought he did a lot better of having his number, tiring this guy down. You know, wrestling looked a lot better. Not that Cormier really tried to wrestle much in that fight, but it's just like, yeah, I think you made mention for a guy that's 39 years old and is a part-time firefighter. He puts the work in. He knows what he's got to do. And when he's motivated, he shows up in great shape. I think he's extremely motivated. I think he is going to show up in great shape. I think he goes out there, he scores some takedowns, and he hopefully grinds Francis Ngannou. But listen, I mean, at any point, if Stipe gets clipped and gets knocked out, like, would any of us be surprised? No, it's a dangerous fight. It's a volatile fight. It could go either way. I'm going with Stipe. When was the last time you've seen the active standing champion, the underdog to the number 1 contender? It's a lot of disrespect, man. Why is Stipe a +110? First of all, he's already beat this guy. Second of all, he's the reigning champion. And third of all, you and I, right, we've been watching this sport for a very long time, man.
Plus years. Yeah.
I've been watching since 2006, right? So forever, it was like, who's the greatest heavyweight in the world? Fedor or Emelianenko. But those days are over, right? And then who surpassed Fedor? It was Cain Velasquez actually did. But like, you know, and he was a flash in the pan. His body just didn't held up. So who took the mantle from them? Well, it was Fabricio Verdum. He defeated Fedor and he defeated Cain Velasquez, and he put a really legitimate little run together for himself. But it's like, you know what? Stipe is the greatest heavyweight of all time. He knocks out Fabricio Verdum. He takes on any challenger that they give him. He fights the best guys he can. He never goes out and dodges a fight. You know, when he lost the first Cormier fight, he was like, well, where's my rematch? You know, I've defended this belt 3 times. I deserve a rematch, and he did. And you know what Daniel Cormier says? I want to fight Brock Lesnar. It's like, Brock Lesnar, what? Why does nobody want to fight the top guy?
Yeah.
Right? You know, I talked about Woodley. It's the same thing. Why are you trying to fight Nate Diaz? Because some guys want the payday. Some guys want the glory, right? There's going to be a time where Stipe Miocic is, you know, hopefully a 90, 100-year-old man. Eventually his time comes and he dies. And when he dies, he's not going to heaven. He's not going to hell. Motherfucker's going straight to Valhalla. And that's where he's earned his spot. And that's where he belongs. And I honestly think that he's just got that will and that desire. Now, mind you, will and desire, just when it goes fuzzy and black because you're unconscious, well, you know what? I guess your personality's not
for you there.
It's not going to shine through you here. But again, when you see Francis, like the way he's knocking out these guys, especially the Arizino fight where everyone looks at the clip a million times. So
disrespectful, dude. So like, I'm just going to run through it.
It's a 6-punch combination where 5 of them miss. Will miss by a landslide. And the 6th one hits him and knocks him out, right? With Stipe, surely it's like, dude, time the takedown. Get this guy down. Don't play with your food. Don't stand with him. And beyond all that, the last point I want to make is Stipe is one of these guys that he's not too proud. You know, a lot of guys would say, oh, you're a striker? Well, I'm gonna strike with the striker. Oh, you're the wrestler? Well, I'm gonna show you I can take you down. It's like this guy does what he needs to do to win the fight. That's the most important thing. So I'm gonna back Stipe again. I did have him the last time. This one's gonna be a lot more difficult. I just think because of the 3 years difference. You know, now he's 39. The difference there is going to be a little bit more effective. Francis Ngannou, I think he's going to be a little more ready. He's going to be a little bit better shape. And it was a close enough fight the last time around. That's like those small adjustments. If they go Francis's way, maybe he does win the fight. But I got my Croatian brethren, Stipe Miocic, so I'm going to have to bank him one more time. The official prop that I would like in this fight, though, is I actually like the fight to start round 3 plus 115. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but I got Stipe by decision. It's 420, so of course it spoke to me. But yeah, I mean, listen, he did it the last time around. And I was actually speaking with Dave Millhouse. He brought up a great point. He was like, well, if Francis wins, you'd expect him to knock him out. You brought the same point. If you're going to bet Francis, you bet that Francis by knockout. But if you bet Stipe, I mean, the last time we seen it was a decision. He went through the motions. He's securing the takedowns and holding this guy down. But Francis has shown no durability issues. You know, he's never been finished. He lost the decision to Stipe over 5. He lost the decision over to Derek Lewis, in which he just opted to not do anything. But his submission game is actually not great submission offense, but like I was saying, he's got an educated guard. He's able to defend submissions. Stipe Miocic, here's a great stat for you. Never attempted one single submission, entire UFC career. Been fighting the career for 10 years. Never attempted a submission. So the submission's off the table. So now Stipe needs to knock him out. Is Stipe going to knock him out with ground and pound? Like last time his ground and pound didn't look great. It was mostly just neutralizing him. So what Dave was saying is if you are betting Stipe, why wouldn't you take the over 2.5? Why wouldn't you take the over 3.5? And so for me, I thought the same thing. You know what? I am taking Stipe. Stipe's not knocking him out in the first round. He's probably not knocking him out in the second round. It's going to be a grind. It's going to be slow this guy down. It's going to take this guy into deeper waters. And so your theory is not bad. 3, 4, and 5. Maybe Stipe takes him out 3, 4, and 5. Great. I got fight to start round 3, right? Which is still plus 115. I'm okay with it. If he took him out 3, 4, 5, I'd be okay with it. But if he starts to get tired, he realizes this is a dangerous opponent. I don't want to overexert myself. I don't want to tire myself. I don't want to give this guy too much space to potentially get up. Then it's just going to be ground him, neutralize him, and hopefully win this fight. And that's going to bank up rounds. So the last time he did it with relative ease, Francis only hit him 20 times, significant strikes, 20 times the last time. It's like you got to do the same thing and neutralize him. And last but not least, because I always say this, if Stipe wins, he gets a fight with John Jones, right? John Jones moving up to heavyweight. That's the story. That's the discussion. They're going to give him an immediate title fight, and that's your golden ticket. That's that's Dustin Poirier turning down an active title fight to fight Conor McGregor, right? This is it. So you've got Stipe Miocic. He's got pay-per-view buys. He's the A side because he's the heavyweight champion. This is a huge spot. They'd give him, I don't know what his deal is, but it would be between $3 to $5 for pay-per-view buys. Let's say it's on the low end, it's $3. You're going to send 1 million pay-per-view buys. Your portion is $3 per every buy. That's $3 million in pay-per-view revenue in Stipe's pocket. He's 39. He's a part-time firefighter. The end of the road is near for him, but it's not just now. You got to win this fight. You get the Jones fight. Then you can sail off as a very rich and wealthy man. And so Stipe is highly motivated for this one. He's just got to put it together. And if people want to shoot the shit at me on Twitter and be like, fucking idiot, man, he got knocked out. It's like, I realize that's a possibility. I realize it. But you know what? Sometimes my heart's got to overcome my head. My heart says Stipe.
I'm glad that you brought up that motivation factor here for Stipe, because that's one narrative that I've been hearing all week, is that Francis is more motivated than him to go out there and get the title. But what about Stipe's side, right? I think that John Jones fight is a huge factor for him to at least motivation wise to go out there and get a victory here so that he can secure that payday. And most importantly, secure his legacy, right? Go out there and beat the GOAT, the guy that's never been beaten before outside of that Matt Hamill travesty, right? Like this is truly motivating for Stipe to go out there and get the W. And that's why I'm not putting any serious money on this fight, right? It could go either freaking way. If Francis Ngannou lands one of those nukes, it's night. And we both absolutely acknowledge that and know that that could be a possible outcome. So I'm throwing lunch money here on the Stipe round bets, which is what I like, the rounds 3, 4, and 5, like I said, plus 900 all the way up to plus 1900, depending on which round you take. But I'm glad that we're on the same side here. Hopefully it comes to fruition, and we'll see tomorrow, obviously, with the rest of the odds crew. Let's see if we can get all the guys on the Stipe side for another consensus underdog pick for us, and see if we can keep that train moving along. All right, let's move on here to the 3 best bets, and then we'll get the hell up on out of here for you guys. Let me bring up my screen real quick. There we go. And as always, I will kick things off here. We got the first one. We got Marc-Andre Barriault. Like I said, it was the first fight of the night. Round 3, I love me that prop. I think Azaitar's cardio is just not going to be able to hold up to the style of Barriault's fighting, which is just stay in your face, don't really give you any room to breathe, and really start to put the pressure on him. I think that he sucks the wind out of Abu, and either gets the second or third round finish. Obviously, that round 3 prop looks so nice at plus 1475, so I got to take a little bit of a sprinkle there. Next up, we got Miranda Maverick by KO. Like I said, plus 575, and I like the fact that Cody did bring up the fact that she's never won by KO outside of that Liana Jojua fight, but I gotta I can't overlook how bad Gillian Robertson looks when she's getting hit by these fighters. And Miranda Maverick is getting better on a fight-to-fight basis with her Muay Thai. I think if she does get the KO here, it might be a little bit until we see that KO line this high up once again. And then lastly, I got Jamie Mullarkey via decision plus 315. I really like that spot. I think he grinds out Khama worthy here and goes on to win a decision victory. I think he has a much better overall MMA game here. I think his durability should hold up as it has over the last couple fights. I know he's been knocked out twice on the regional scene, but outside of that, he's been looking pretty great, and he's truly distanced himself from those knockouts, so which is why I trust him in the spot, and especially at plus 315. God, give me that line. And again, let's mention that Faraz ZM robbery as well. I thought he won that fight, and that's another good reason as to why he should go into this fight. And hopefully, get the takedowns, secure the takedowns, get a bunch of control time, and beat, in my opinion, a very mediocre Khama worthy. Who was really blasted off after he knocked out Devontae Smith. But I think Mullarkey has a really good game plan to go out there and really mix it up on Khama and take home that decision victory. All right, Cody, you're up.
I mean, Locko has got the big cojones. He's got a nice big plus money plays. Cody's like Homer Simpson. He squeezes the penny. So Oleksiejczuk versus Bukauskas under 2.5 minus 155. Again, it's minus 155. It just covers both sides. But if Lord Michael Oleksiejczuk goes out there and does what he's capable of, he's very capable of getting that first round knockout. If you want to chase first round knockout, it's a big plus money play. If you want to just get him by knockout, it's still a plus money play. I want to cover myself on both sides. Bukauskas also has a chance of winning. He needs to fatigue him. He needs to survive early. And if he does, he himself is going to get the finish. So instead of trying to go one side either way, close fight, competitive fight, as most of this card is, I like that under 2.5, 155. I actually like that a lot. Feel good about it. Moving on from that, we're going to go with our first plus money play here. We got Nurmagomedov by decision plus 120. At first glance, it's like, what? A Nurmagomedov by decision plus money? It's a Bubakar. It's not quite Habib. It's his 31-year-old cousin. He doesn't have great punch resistance, but I think he's just got to go out there with the game plan of take this fight down, grind. One thing I really like about Abubakar Nurmagomedov is that, similar to his cousin, is that he's a chain wrestler. He'll go for the single leg to the double leg. He'll go to the inside trip. He's got a lot of multitude, ways of just chain wrestling, switching it up, and getting the fight to the ground. That's what we need here. We just need wrestle, keep this fight to the ground. What we've seen with Jared Gooden is that he's actually a pretty durable guy. He's a tough guy. He's a durable guy. Just take him down, ground him over and over again, get that decision, plus 120. It's a plus money tag. I'm in. Finish it up. It's like, oh, I can feel my cojones starting to drop. Maybe it's puberty time. And so we're going to hit you with it. Plus 230, which is Vicente Luque by decision. Again, you guys all know my spiel on Tyron Woodley, but Vicente Luque has got really sharp hands, and he's very accurate. He's got very good pace and output. Quite literally, his only problem is that his punch defense is not very good. He doesn't move his head. Outside of that, this guy's got a plethora of skills. And you talked about earlier these Henry Hoof guys. I mean, it's a great gym over at Sanford MMA. They're putting everything together. I think that Vicente Luque is still young. You can talk about all the damage he's taken, but when you're young, the damage doesn't accumulate. When you see this guy in his mid-30s, he won't remember his own name. But for the time being, he still got it. And I think that he goes out there, puts it on Woodley, beats him to the punch, uses the output, cooks the body, works it. If he's got a compromised rib, why not go down there, use the leg kicks, use everything you can. Just keep your back off the mat. Watch out for that one right hand. Outside of that, he should be able to coast a little bit on him. If it was a 5-round fight, maybe Woodley is just not at it anymore. But in a 3-round fight, his durability has never been a giant issue. I don't think it's going to be an issue here. And so Vicente Luque over the course of 3 is what leads me to believe that is going to be a decision rather than a KO. And so plus 230 Vicente by Luque by decision seemed like good enough to me. Good plus money prop. So that's the direction I decided to go with this week.
All right. I think that's some solid 3 bets each from us. Obviously, mine always on the juicy side, looking to cash some big tickets, but I do trust the Cody side here. The Oleksiejczuk and Bukauskas under 2.5 was definitely one that I was going to add, but once I saw Cody send it over to me, I'm like, I don't want to give the same one here, so I'll definitely let him get that one. But yeah, that's definitely like my second spot that I like the most on this card. Obviously, the under 2.5 there. So there you guys have it. 3 best bets for me, Cody. Best prop bets, I should say, from me and Cody. And that's a wrap on another show, man. I got to go back and look how many we've actually done of these, but it feels like I'm so comfortable on these Thursday nights with you. And it seems like the audience continues to grow on a week-to-week basis. And it's great to see, right? Like a lot of people are supporting the show. I truly love it. The live chat is always super engaging, whether it's, tripping over each other or talking shit about us, or even just loving the bets that we have ourselves. It's a great time for sure. But I'm glad that everybody looks forward 8 p.m. Easterns on Thursday nights to hang with us. where you guys can find us tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern is the final weigh-in. Me, Cody, Bleed, and Prediction Guru will be going over our final thoughts for the card, giving you guys our thoughts on what happened at the weigh-ins and who we truly think is going to win, and finally locking in our bets and kind of convincing ourselves on or off a certain side. I really love chopping it up with those guys. Cody, I'll give you the platform here just to say what you want on the end, and then I'll wrap it up at the end, buddy.
Yeah, everybody knows Twitter at CJ Saftic, and yeah, the show tomorrow, odds.com, we're going to be doing the final weigh-ins, and I love that show just because you get to see the weigh-ins. It's we try to analyze all the information you can. You watch the pre-fight footage, you watch the interviews, if the UFC puts out embedded stuff, you're looking at what they're eating, you're combing through their Instagram, being like, wait a second, dude's, was at a birthday party 3 weeks ago, and he's got a beer in his hand. Like, you overanalyze it. You try to do everything you can, but what it comes down to is the weigh-ins. That's your last little bit. What do these guys look at? What's the size discrepancy? Who missed weight? It's our last little bit of information. So if you guys are free to join us tomorrow night, we'd love to have you. And yeah, I just want to say, basically echo the same sentiments that you had. The comment section has been great. The people that are tuning in have been fantastic. And you've seen the conversation. I know sometimes they get on each other, sometimes they get on us, but listen, in real life, I rip on my friends. They rip on me. We're friends. It's not like, I wouldn't say it's not disrespectful. It's that someone has an opinion, you have another opinion, and it's the engagements. So I know I just seen someone got blocked. The odd time someone gets blocked, right? It happens.
You cross the line, you're getting blocked. That's all I'm saying. Talk all the shit you want. Just don't cross the line.
Exactly. There is a line. You don't want to be a habitual line stepper, right? As Dave Chappelle would say. But yeah, I really like that the community is building. We're getting a lot of good insight. People are on the same sides, and then we come back, we just keep going from there. So ultimately, odds.com is the MVP for giving us the platform. You and I, we love this. We have no problem. But the real MVP is the people that take time out of their day. If you watch it live, that means a lot to us. If you're unable to make it live, man, life happens. There's no problem with that. You go and you seek the replay. Maybe you go to odds.com. They love that. We love that. So support's second to none. If we can give you winning picks, I know we had a good week last week. Actually, the last 2 weeks have been good. And let's just keep this train rolling because you guys deserve that. We put the work in to try to do our best. So, need a couple good bounces, but hopefully we get some of them on Saturday.
For sure. Again, the fact that these guys come back on a week-to-week basis, no matter what kind of shit they talk, it just shows enough support to us that we can continue to sustain these numbers and continue doing this on a week-to-week basis. So shout out to the live chat, shout out to the regulars, shout out to the newbies. Hopefully you guys stick around, and hopefully it wasn't too toxic tonight. But we know that we're going to be trying to cash some tickets this weekend, and hopefully we gave you guys some good looks to go out there and go to your bookie or wherever the hell you go to make your bets. And hopefully we can make some good bets this weekend. All right. We're going to sign off here. Cody, thank you again. As always, love chatting and chopping it up with you on Thursday nights. Again, you guys can always find us here. Next week, we're off. There's no UFC event next weekend, so don't try to show up Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Be like, where the fuck are these odds guys? We're not going to be here, so don't be here either. We'll be back on the April 10th fight week. I believe that card is headlined by Darren Till and Marvin Vittori. I think I got a ton of good spots on there. I can't wait to break it down for you guys. But that's where you guys can find us for the next event. But in terms of tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern, final weigh-in. Me, Cody, Bleed, and MMA Prediction Guru, 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be here breaking down the fights for you guys and giving you guys our thoughts on the final weigh-ins, all that type of stuff, all the goodies, and then giving you guys our final predictions. So on behalf of myself, Cody, and the Odds Group, go ahead, Cody.
Last thing you said, don't show up here next week. You know what? We should talk to Cynthia and Odds and try to see if they want to do a Bellator show because the show next week, loaded. They got lines out early. I don't know what the props are like. But I love hanging out with you on Thursday and the rest of the clan. So yeah, I never say never. Maybe we can talk to the bosses about that one. But for the time being, there's no UFC next week.
Good point. Bellator does have a pretty good schedule for April, and I wouldn't mind breaking it down next week with you as well too. So yeah, maybe you will find us here at 8 p.m. next Thursday. Just keep your eye on the Twitter timeline, or at least have your notifications on here for Odds HQ, so you guys know whenever we are actually going live. All right, on behalf of myself, Cody, and the Odds Crew, we'll see you guys tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern right here on Odds HQ. Have a good night and see you guys tomorrow.